Before we begin, let's slow everything down. You're not here to learn dates, or memorize rules, or keep track of every name. This channel exists for quiet watching, for long stories told gently, from a distance where nothing is urgent. We walk through strange worlds and broken timelines, the way Prismo watches them from the center of time, calmly, patiently, letting moments unfold without rushing them. If you're still awake, and you want more journeys like this waiting for you later, you can quietly subscribe or leave a like, a small signal to keep these timelines playing. And if you're already drifting, that's perfect. Let's begin. Finn is already falling when you arrive. There is no jump, no scream, no heroic wind-up, just the slow, silent glide of two silhouettes, Finn and Jake, drifting backward through a circle of impossible red, as if the universe has opened one lazy, hungry eye and exhaled them into somewhere else. The portal doesn't roar, it sighs. Color stretches into thin ribbons around them. Gravity forgets what it was doing, and for a moment, the fall feels less like danger and more like lying back into very dark water. This is the Nightosphere, but not the loud version. Not yet. Below. If below even means anything in a place that treats direction like a suggestion, the sky folds in on itself, a bruised gradient of purples and arterial reds, smudged together like someone painted a storm on wet glass. Islands the size of cities drift by on invisible currents, jagged silhouettes with crooked towers and bone-white forests, all moving very slowly, like they're on a conveyor belt that runs through every bad decision in existence. In the distance, rivers scream, not figuratively. Actual rivers, long silver ribbons of liquefied noise, pouring between cliffs and upside-down mountains. But here is the thing, from where you are, they don't shriek. They murmur, the way a thunderstorm sounds when you're under heavy blankets and 3 doors away. It should be unbearable. It isn't. The Nightosphere has range. As Finn and Jake drift, weightless, their bodies rotate in the air, lazy cartwheels through a multiverse sinkhole. You can almost feel that particular Nightosphere gravity, not quite pulling, not quite letting go, like the pressure of being watched by a very patient predator with excellent paperwork. Because this realm is not just chaos, it is organized hunger. Somewhere beneath those floating islands, beneath the screaming rivers and the bureaucratic lava pits, the Nightosphere is keeping records, meticulous, cosmic ledgers of every soul, every scream, every tiny moment when someone, somewhere, wished for power they didn't understand. Think about that for a second. A hell that files. And in the middle of that filing system, there is a shadow. Hunson Abadir doesn't arrive with a jump scare. He's already here. A long, vertical absence on one of those distant islands, more like a cut in the scenery than a character. You don't hear his footsteps. You hear the softer sound, pen on parchment, nib on contract, the dry, almost soothing scratch of a signature being dragged across a soul. He is not roaring. He is not chasing. He is waiting. The way a clause waits in the fine print. The way a wish waits at the center of time for someone reckless enough to say it out loud. Let's start from that feeling, not the panic of falling, but the strange calm of being escorted. Because tonight, we're not fighting the Nightosphere. We're going to tour it. Slowly. Safely. Like walking through a museum after hours, when the alarms are off and the exhibits are still dangerous, but only if you touch them. In this video, the screaming rivers can stay muffled, the contracts can stay unsigned, and the hungry universe that lives under Ooo can lean in close without biting. At least, not yet. Why the Nightosphere matters while you're trying to sleep. So let's start by being very clear about where we're going, and why it matters while you're lying there in the dark, listening. In this video, we're going to trace the Nightosphere from its origins as Adventure Time's version of hell, all the way through its rules, its promotions and paperwork, its soul-eating contracts, and the small, painful memories that keep echoing through Marceline's childhood. We're going to walk beside Hunson Abadir, beside Marceline, and beside the Nightosphere itself, as if they were three characters in the same sad, cosmic family drama. Because here is the thing. The show never treats the Nightosphere as just a spooky backdrop. It treats it like a mirror. Hunson isn't only a demon, he's a parent who missed the recital and then ate the fries. Marceline isn't only a cool half-demon vampire, she's a kid who watched the underworld reach into her life and rearrange her idea of love. Even the Nightosphere, this roaring under-universe, feels less like a random pit of torment and more like a physical shape given to fear, guilt, and neglect. Think about that for a second while you breathe in and out. So, tonight, we're going to talk about cosmic contracts. The way Hunson's power depends on consent, on signatures, on people agreeing, often without reading the fine print, to let their souls be filed away. We'll look at soul-eating not just as horror, but as a metaphor for relationships that consume you. We'll drift through promotions and bureaucratic hierarchies, where becoming the ruler of the Nightosphere can be as absurdly procedural as Finn reading the wrong incantation and suddenly being in charge. Authority as a clerical error. Damnation as a paperwork problem. We'll also slow down with Marceline. We'll follow her timeline backwards to those moments when the Nightosphere first pressed its thumbprint into her existence. The fries, the broken promises, the way a child's desire for attention can feel as vast and dangerous as any multiverse portal. Is the Nightosphere truly evil, or is it just doing a necessary cosmic job that nobody else wanted? Like being the universe's garbage disposal for bad decisions? The show never hands us a simple answer, and we're not going to either. Instead, we'll stay with the emotional stakes, loneliness, the quiet ache of being neglected, the strange comfort of realizing that even demons have office hours, that even a soul-devouring underworld has rules, forms, and a chain of command. It is not chaos. It is not random. It is a system humming away beneath Ooo, turning fear into policy and regret into paperwork. And all of this we'll explore gently. The ideas might be dramatic, the center of time, the edge of the universe, the hungry Nightosphere beneath the floorboards of reality. But the pacing will stay soft and measured. You can let your body relax while your mind wanders down those dark corridors, knowing that we're just observing. Touring, reading the fine print by candlelight. When you're ready, we'll open the first door, where the Nightosphere came from and why it had to exist at all. Tonight's roadmap through the underworld. So, let's start by laying the map on the table. If the Nightosphere is a labyrinth under the floorboards of reality, then tonight we're going to walk it in slow, deliberate circles, so your brain knows what's coming and can relax into the descent. First, we'll sketch the basic geography and rules of this place, not with cartographer precision, but with the broad strokes that matter. Where the screaming pits are, where the portals open over Ooo, where the soul-linked contracts get processed. We're going to talk about how this realm hangs off the universe like a moldy basement, how its chaos is still bound by rules about consent, signatures and fine print, lines, forms, waiting rooms. Think about that for a second. An underworld that runs on paperwork as much as on torment. From there, we move to Hunson Abadir himself, the Nightosphere's smiling disaster of a CEO and dad. We'll drift through his power, his contracts, the way he can devour a soul with the same casual hunger he uses to eat Marceline's fries. Here is the thing. He is not just a monster in the dark. He is a manager. He is the one making sure the cosmic garbage gets taken out, even if his methods are horrific and his performance reviews are written in screaming. We'll look at his deals, the way he leans on desire, loopholes and signatures to keep the machinery of damnation running. Then we'll follow the echo of a bass guitar back through time and sit with Marceline, half demon, half vampire, fully entangled in this place. We're going to float through her songs and memories, The quiet moments where the Nightosphere isn't just a hell dimension, it's her childhood backdrop. We'll trace how being Hunson's daughter means inheriting not just power, but trauma, not just access to the underworld, but a lifetime of complicated visits, broken promises, and portals that feel suspiciously like custody arrangements. After that, we'll step into the everyday office life of demons, the promotions, the cues. Finn's accidental promotion to ruler when he reads the wrong incantation, and the entire hierarchy just accepts it, because that's how the rules work. We'll watch as Cosmic Horror wears a name badge and fills out Form 666, B in triplicate. It's absurd. It's bureaucratic. It's also, in that specifically Adventure Time way, uncomfortably recognizable. Threaded through all of this, we'll keep circling one central question. Is the Nightosphere pure evil, or is it a necessary cosmic landfill that someone has to manage? An ugly part of existence that keeps the rest of the multiverse clean. In this video, every contract, every scream, every awkward father-daughter reunion becomes evidence in that case. As you listen, you can quietly choose your favorite angle: Marceline's trauma, Hunson's deals, or the bureaucracy itself. Pick one to follow like a constellation while you drift. Each of those will get its own soft spotlight later on, and by the end, the underworld won't feel random. It will feel organized. Horrifying, yes, but organized. And once the roadmap is clear, we can finally open that first door. The origin of this realm, and why the universe ever allowed a place like the Nightosphere to exist in the first place. Get cozy before we open the Hellmouth filing cabinet. So before we open that first Nightosphere door and let the underworld breathe on us, you should probably get comfortable on this side of reality. Adjust your blanket, or your hoodie, or whatever protective ward you've chosen against cosmic dad issues. Dim the lights if you can. Let the room fall into that quiet pre-dream blur where the edges of existence stop arguing with you. If it feels safe, you can even close your eyes. You don't need to watch the screen to follow the Nightosphere. We're going to let the words do the walking. Imagine the darkness behind your eyelids as a low red horizon, like you're standing at the edge of a universe that smells faintly of brimstone and office coffee. Think about that for a second. Hell, but with paperwork, lines, forms, a waiting room at the center of time where every soul has a file. Here is the thing. As much as this realm runs on contracts and screaming, this video does not. No jump scares, no sudden volume spikes, no surprise lich at the foot of your bed. Just a steady, contemplative drift through chaos in that specifically Adventure Time way where horror is wrapped in a blanket of absurdity and heart. You're safe here. The only thing we're going to eat is lore. And while you're settling in, I'll gently slide in our own tiny, harmless contract. If you're enjoying this slow descent, you can like the video or subscribe. The way a demon might casually slide a scroll across the table. Except this one doesn't bind your soul. It just tells the algorithm that quiet cosmic analysis of cursed dimensions should continue to exist. No pressure, no eternal torment clause, just a little digital signature that keeps the multiverse of sleepy lore open. If your hands are free, you can tap it now. If not, just let the idea float somewhere near the back of your mind, next to that memory of Hansen Abadir eating Marceline's fries like it was nothing. Later, when you're awake again, you might wander back and leave a comment, your favorite Nightosphere moment, or the Marceline scene that hit you hardest. It's like leaving a tiny soul print on the channel, a note in the filing cabinet that says, "I was here, and I remember." And as you breathe a little slower, feel the rhythm change. The housekeeping is done. The mortal world is dimmed. In this video, the next sound you hear from the Nightosphere is not a scream, but a door. Heavy, reluctant, metal grinding against the fabric of reality as it creaks open just wide enough for us to slip through together and finally ask why the universe allowed a place like this to exist at all. reframing the Nightosphere, not just hell but a mirror. So when that door opens, you brace yourself for screams, and instead you walk into a waiting room, fluorescent nightmare lighting, infinite cubicles, a line that might actually be older than your entire timeline. Here is the thing. Adventure Time sells you the Nightosphere as hell, but it keeps using it as a mirror. On the surface, it is pure punishment. Lakes of fire, chains, screaming faces. But look again, and it's also paperwork. Between punishment and paperwork. Between chaos and cubicles. Between cosmic evil and personal failure, the Nightosphere keeps hanging in that in-between space, like the universe took every unresolved emotion it didn't want to process and outsourced it to a demonic call center. We're going to slow down with that for a second, because this is where the show gets quietly sharp. The Nightosphere is not just where bad souls go, it's where characters go when they can't outrun their own guilt or family history anymore. Finn becomes ruler there through a procedural error, trapped in a crown of authority he never asked for, and the realm instantly reflects his fear of becoming a bad leader. Marceline gets pulled back into it again and again, not only because of contracts and portals, but because her entire existence is entangled with that place. Hudson Abadir sits at the center of this, but he is not a sophisticated devil with a 12-step temptation plan. He is a neglectful middle manager of damnation. Infinite power over souls, zero grasp of basic empathy. He can rewrite your eternity with a contract, but he cannot remember not to eat his daughter's fries. Think about that for a second. In a universe full of cosmic beings, his horror isn't that he's uniquely evil, it's that he's recognizably, mundanely selfish. He is not evil in the elegant way. He is not even indifferent in a clean cosmic way. He is just bound by rules he enforces, but never examines the way a badly wired parent repeats the same harm they once survived. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the Nightosphere is less the bad place and more the emotional landfill of Ooo, and Hudson is the overpowered supervisor who keeps losing the key to the gate. And then there's Marceline, standing exactly where this all intersects. Half demon, half vampire, living between worlds, between childhood and immortality, between victim of the Nightosphere and inheritor of its power. She can walk through its reality like it's just another bad neighborhood, but every visit drags up memories of abandonment, hunger, and a father who saw her more as extension than as person. Here is the quiet twist. When we understand the Nightosphere, we're not really mapping a fantasy hellscape. We're mapping the emotional backbone of some of the show's most haunting human moments. The fries, the fights, the songs about old wounds that never decayed with time. And as you drift deeper, the question stops being, is the Nightosphere evil? And becomes, what does it say about the universe that a place like this had to exist at all? Let's start answering that by asking what the rules of this realm actually are, and who, if anyone, benefits from keeping it running. Drawing the map. What the Nightosphere actually is. So here is the thing. You cannot talk about whether the Nightosphere is necessary until you draw the basic map of what it actually is. Not metaphorically, not as a vibe, as a real hostile coordinate in the Adventure Time universe. You close your eyes, and instead of drifting into a dream, you're dropping sideways into a place that is, quite literally, Oo's version of hell. The show never has a character walk on screen and say, "Welcome to hell, population U." But that is absolutely what's being sketched. The Nightosphere is a separate dimension of torment and chaos, ruled by Hudson Abadir, who functions as both Demon King and cosmic debt collector. He eats souls. He enforces contracts. He runs on consent and fine print in that specifically Adventure Time way, where the devil is not just in the details, he is the details. This is not a vague evil cloud. This is an underworld with a mailing address. Visually, you can feel how wrong its physics are. Floating rock platforms drift through a red-black void, like broken sidewalks from a city that offended the universe and got scattered. Rivers of screaming souls pour through the air, not as a metaphor for guilt, but as literal, churning traffic. There are endless crowds of demons packed together, shoving, yelling, queuing, like a nightmare version of a DMV, where the penalty for cutting in line is eternal agony. And above it all, the sky doesn't open out. It presses down. It feels less like atmosphere and more like a ceiling that has opinions about you. Let's start with access, because this is where the horror gets procedural. You do not just trip and fall into the Nightosphere. You need portals, circles, incantations, contracts. Finn reads the wrong spell and accidentally becomes ruler for a moment, which is funny, but also quietly terrifying because it means authority here is bound to specific words and rituals. Hansen himself can move between Ooo and his domain when summoned or released, like a CEO commuting to the Office of Suffering. There are rules. There is a door, and someone has to open it. And we're going to be precise about what this realm is not. It is not just a random monster dimension where cool designs hang out. It is not a dreamscape that disappears when you wake up. It's closer to a cosmic landfill and prison system fused together. A structured underworld with hierarchy, promotion, demotion, paperwork, and a food chain that leads directly into Hansen's mouth. Think about that for a second. Torment, but unionized enough to have middle management. Which leads to the uncomfortable job description. The Nightosphere, for all its horror, does something in the cosmology of Ooo. It processes, punishes, or simply contains certain souls and energies that cannot just free range across the multiverse. Someone has to hold the overflow of desire, violence, and broken promises. Someone has to be the bottom of the timeline, where all the worst outcomes drain. Is that evil or is that infrastructure? As you drift deeper, keep that question with you, because next we're going to look at how life actually operates inside this place, and who exactly is keeping the lights on. Hell with a front desk, the Nightosphere's bureaucracy. So when we say infrastructure, we are not being poetic. The Nightosphere literally has a front desk. You can almost hear the flicker of fluorescent lights over the roar of eternal torment, the way a bad office hums over your head while your soul quietly wilts. You do not just fall into this place and start screaming. You fall into a line. You take a number. You wait. Let's start with that image. A snaking queue of demons and damned mortals, all clutching forms that don't make sense, all trying to argue with a receptionist who has seen every possible excuse across every possible timeline. The walls are alive, the floor is a mouth, but there is still a clipboard where you initial next to agree to be tormented. Here is the thing. Adventure Time takes hell, and instead of fire and brimstone, it gives you something worse. It gives you paperwork. We're going to sit with Finn for a second, because he accidentally proves how this reality works. He doesn't conquer the Nightosphere through raw power or some cosmic wish. He reads the wrong incantation, holds the right amulet, and boom, promoted, ruler. Not because the universe thinks he's worthy, but because the rules say whoever activates the artifact and signs their metaphorical name on that dotted line gets the job. Think about that for a second. The throne of torment is less a destiny and more a clerical error. This is the hierarchy. At the bottom, lesser demons literally stamped and categorized, shuffling between departments of agony, like overworked interns who also happen to eat souls. Above them, mid-level managers of misery, the ones who file complaints about unauthorized screaming, who send memos about quota shortfalls in the Eternal Despair division. And at the top, Hansen Abadir, not just a monster, but the CEO of suffering. He is not chaos. He is not a random predator. He is the executive who signs off on your eternal fate with the calm of someone approving office supplies. His power is contractual, consent twisted into a weapon. You sign, you agree, You belong to him. His voice doesn't just roar through the multiverse. It reads clauses, enforces deadlines, closes loopholes that other demons try to slip through. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the cosmic horror is dressed up like a badly run government office where no one ever goes home, and that's why it feels so uncomfortably familiar. The waiting, the forms, the sense that even in a place beyond life, you still have to stand behind someone arguing about a fee they definitely owe. It turns hell into a nightmare version of the DMV, or a corporate building at the center of time where the elevators only go down. You recognize it. You've been here, in miniature, every time a system decided more about your existence than you did, but buried in all that bureaucracy is a quiet implication. If contracts bind Hunson's power, then contracts also limit it. If there is a front desk, there is a filing system. And if there is a filing system, there are loopholes. Someone, somewhere could read the fine print. Someone could exploit it. As you drift deeper, keep that thought close, because next we're going to ask what happens when those rules break, and who pays the price when the paperwork finally catches fire. Contracts in blood and ink, how souls are claimed. So let's start with the quiet horror of it. Hunson doesn't just roar and devour, he slides a document across an infernal desk and asks you to sign. No chains, no chase, just ink. In a universe full of screaming monsters and collapsing timelines, the most dangerous weapon in the Nightosphere might be a pen that never runs out, and paper that smells faintly like burnt promises. Here is the thing about Hunson's power. It is contractual, procedural, almost polite. He doesn't rip your soul out of your body. He gets you to hand it over. His authority in this cosmic underworld is not just raw demonic power. It's the accumulated weight of 1,000,000 signatures, each one a tiny legal meteor that crashes into your existence and leaves a permanent crater. Think about that for a second. The ruler of Adventure Time's hell is basically the universe's worst loan officer. Consent is technically present. That's the moral trap. You sign. You agree. You say yes. But the yes is wrapped in hunger, or fear, or desperation, or Hunson's weird, charismatic dad energy that makes you think this is probably fine. He is not evil in the mustache-twirling way. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound to a system where, if you write your name on the dotted line, the Nightosphere owns the timeline of your afterlife, and the rules say that makes it fair. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the show makes this both absurd and disturbingly familiar. You've already seen a softer version of this in your own reality. You click, I agree, on a 20-page terms of service you will never read. You sign a predatory loan because rent is due and time is not on your side. You stay in a relationship where the emotional contract is wildly uneven, but the fine print is buried under nostalgia and hope. Those aren't written in demon blood, but the logic is eerily similar. You consent, technically, while not understanding the cost. And the act itself is so small. Just your name, a scribble, a gesture so quiet you could do it half asleep. Yet in the Nightosphere, that little curl of ink echoes louder than any scream, because once it's on file, reality adjusts. Your soul is now a line item, a resource, a fulfilled desire on Hunson's balance sheet of power. Somewhere, deep in that dimension of chaos, there is a filing cabinet. Of course there is. We're going to imagine it as endless, humming under its own archival gravity, drawers labeled not by alphabet, but by broken promises. Every signature, every deal made in panic, every soul that thought they were getting a better deal than they deserved, Finn's accidental brush with authority, Marceline's lifelong contract with her own heritage, unnamed demons bartering centuries for one more wish of power. And if there is a cabinet, there is a key. There is always a key. As you drift further down, hold on to that idea, because next we're going to open one of those drawers and see what happens when a single signature tries to rewrite its own fate. Hudson Abadir, CEO of Suffering and Disappointing Dad. So when you pull that drawer open, when you follow the scent of brimstone and overdue paperwork, you don't find an abstract force or a faceless algorithm of torment. You find a dad, a soul-eating, contract-waving, universe-adjacent demon who is also really bad at sharing fries. Let's start with Hudson Abadir as the Nightosphere's answer to a CEO. He is the ruler, the boss, the center of time for this particular underworld timeline. Souls are his currency, contracts are his language, and he carries an amount of power that lets him casually bend reality, the way you or I might adjust a chair. He can consume souls like snacks, transform into a towering, jagged-mouthed horror, and warp his domain with a gesture. And here is the thing. He does all of that with the emotional awareness of a middle manager who thinks team morale means ordering one pizza for 20 people. His powers are terrifying, but it's the casualness that gets you. He doesn't summon cosmic storms with ritual gravitas. He just opens a portal like he's checking email. He doesn't agonize over the ethics of soul consumption. It's more like using the company credit card on personal desires because, well, who's going to stop him? The Nightosphere bends around his will, corridors reconfiguring, gravity turning sideways, screaming torment reshuffled like spreadsheets. It's not just hell. It is hell with quarterly performance reviews. And then you remember, this walking HR violation of existence is also Marceline's dad. That is where the horror tilts quietly into heartbreak. Because the show doesn't just tell you he's selfish, it hands you a plate of cold fries and lets you watch. That infamous scene, Hudson swooping in and eating Marceline's fries, is microscopic on the cosmic scale. No contract. No portal. Just a dad eating his kid's food. But in that specifically Adventure Time way, it becomes a black hole of emotional neglect. He is not evil in that moment. He is not even monstrous. He is just absent, so wrapped in his own desire that he cannot see the small universe of hurt sitting right in front of him. Think about that for a second. This is a being who can rewrite a soul's fate with a signature, who rules a multiverse-adjacent torture economy, and the wound that really lasts is a plate of stolen fries and years of not showing up. We're going to sit with that discomfort, because Hudson is also a product of his environment. The Nightosphere is built on rules of consumption and consent that have been warped into something predatory. You sign, you suffer. You hesitate, you're leveraged. In a culture where every existence is a resource and every scream is billable, empathy looks inefficient. Mercy looks like a bad investment. If the entire underworld is one giant incentive structure, pushing you toward devouring rather than nurturing, how much of Hudson's cruelty is personal, and how much is systemic? Here the question starts to whisper at the edge of your thoughts as you drift. Is Hudson cruel because he's a demon, bound to a role in the cosmic bureaucracy, or because he keeps choosing the worst version of that role? Even when it means losing his own daughter, he can tear open reality, but he cannot open up emotionally. He can track every contract in his domain, but he forgets one small promise to be there for Marceline. There is tragedy there. Repetition. The exhaustion of someone who has confused power with love for so long that he cannot tell the difference. And yet, buried in that mess, there are flickers of something else. Tiny glitches in the hell software. A moment of pride. A flash of protectiveness. A hesitation before the next cruel decision. Those are the anomalies in the data, the little bugs in the Nightosphere's operating system. Hold on to those, because next we're going to watch what happens when the underworld's CEO is forced to renegotiate his favorite contract, the one with his own child. Marceline between worlds. Half demon, half heartache. So when the underworld's CEO has to renegotiate his favorite contract with his own kid, you don't just get a custody battle, you get Marceline. A person who is in her own body, the Nightosphere's most complicated loophole. Let's start with the lineage, because the biology here is already a cosmic argument. Marceline is born half-demon through Hunson Abadir, literally carrying the signature of the Nightosphere in her veins, and then later she becomes a vampire, stapling another monstrous identity on top of the first. She is not just one creature. She is a merger, a hostile takeover of her own existence, where demonic hunger, vampiric immortality, and human vulnerability all have to share the same tiny apartment of a soul. Here is the thing. For Marceline, the Nightosphere is not just a scary dimension with screaming faces and bad lighting. It's a legacy. It's the inherited family business of horror. Hunson doesn't just rule that realm. He treats it like a job, a brand, a multiverse franchise of suffering. And Marceline is, on paper, the heir apparent. Whether she wants it or not, every portal to the Nightosphere has her last name written on the door. Think about that for a second. Most people in Ooo can treat the Nightosphere like a distant rumor, a hell-shaped smudge on the edge of the map. Marceline can't. When Finn accidentally becomes ruler by reading the wrong incantation, it feels absurd and procedural, like reality is bound to some obscure corporate policy. For Marceline, that isn't a joke. That's her birthright being handed around like a misprinted coupon. And the show doesn't explain this with exposition dumps. It explains it with songs. In It's Over, Isn't It? Type moments from other series, you get clean catharsis. But Marceline's catalogue is messier, more jagged. Daddy, Why Did You Eat My Fries is framed like a silly breakup song, but it's actually a Nightosphere ballad. Hunson eating her fries is a tiny domestic betrayal that stands in for a cosmic one. If he'll devour her snack without a thought, he'll devour her boundaries, her childhood, her place in the universe. His hunger is personal. When she sings, I thought you cared about me, she's not just talking to her father. She's talking to the realm that made him. Every scream in the Nightosphere feels, retroactively, like it has a little bit of Marceline's childhood baked into the reverb. The emotional geography is all there. The lava pits of abandonment, the bureaucracy of resentment, the cramped waiting rooms of lingering love, where you take a number and hope this time he shows up. We're going to see that the Nightosphere's rules are written on her heart as much as on any infernal contract. She can't fully claim it without becoming what she fears, and she can't fully escape it without cutting out half of who she is. To understand that realm, you have to see it through her eyes. A threat, a home, a question that never gets a clean answer, and the real nightmare is what happens when the realm itself starts answering back. A quiet tour of torture, everyday life in the Nightosphere. So let's start by slowing everything down. The Nightosphere is loud, yes, but not in the way you're expecting. It isn't a constant battle royale of demons hurling fire at each other every second. It's more like a city whose heartbeat is made of arguments and paperwork. In the mid-distance, demons are bickering over Clause 13b of some soul contract, shoving each other in front of rusted kiosks, filling out forms that smoke slightly when signed. Someone is being devoured in the background, casually, the way you might eat chips while waiting in line. No one even looks up. Here is the thing. For most of them, this isn't horror. It's home. The squat, three-eyed Clark demon has a favorite stalagmite to lean against during his break. The winged auditor who screams in binary over minor violations of infernal rules. She's just trying to make quota before the end of the cosmic quarter. They have promotions, petty rivalries, office gossip about who got reassigned to the nicer screaming pit with the better acoustics. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the apocalypse is also a workplace. If you zoom in on a single demon, the chaos resolves into routine. They wake up on their slab, punch in on a clock that bleeds sand instead of time, and shuffle to their station at the center of time for someone else's suffering. They argue about whose turn it is to feed the soul furnace. They complain about management, They stand in their favorite spot where the lava light hits just right. Existence here is not a wild free-for-all. It's a multiverse of tiny, repetitive desires playing out on loop. And then there are the souls. They don't arrive with that blasé familiarity. They drop in stunned, disoriented, fumbling for a reality that no longer applies. At first, it's pure confusion. Why is there a number stamped on their forehead? Why are they in a line? Why does the floor pulse like a heartbeat that isn't theirs? Fear comes next, sharp and bright, when they realize the line is moving toward a screaming pit with a sign overhead that just says, "Intake." Think about that for a second. You are terrified and someone has branded your terror as a department. But we're going to notice something stranger. Slowly, almost against their will, the souls begin to understand that the torment is organized. There are schedules, rotations, a demon with a clipboard checking off that you have completed your daily allotment of despair. The pit doesn't just scream, it screams on time. You are moved from line to cage to contract signing with the grim efficiency of a haunted DMV. The true horror isn't only the pain, it's the way the universe here has decided that pain should run on a timetable. Lines coil neatly beside bottomless chasms. Demons queue politely to throw someone into chaos. The background roar of agony is interrupted by a bored voice calling, "Next!" And the locals barely notice. This is just Tuesday at the edge of reality. So imagine, for a moment, that you're invisible, untouchable. You drift past the arguing clerks, past the scheduled screams, past a bulletin board advertising eternal torment internship opportunities. You're not on the hook. You're just watching the machinery of damnation turn gear by gear, powered by rules older than Ooo itself. As you float, the question starts to form. If this is their normal, what does it mean for anyone who chooses to step into it? We'll follow that question next, into the contracts that invite you in, and the loopholes that pretend to let you out. Finn's promotion, when a hero accidentally runs hell. Let's start with the moment the Nightosphere proves it is less a realm of fire and more a very aggressive office. Finn, trying to rescue Marceline, reads what he thinks is a banishing spell. Wrong page. Wrong line. One mispronounced incantation and the entire universe's equivalent of hell looks up and goes, "Ah, new management. No trial by combat, no cosmic omen. Just paperwork processed." Here is the thing. The transfer of power is absurdly procedural. Hudson Abadir vanishes, Finn gets slapped into a business suit, and a giant flaming sigil basically rubber stamps his face. The throne doesn't roar. The demons don't scream in revolt. A voice just acknowledges the new ruler, like someone logging into a different user profile. Authority, in that specifically Adventure Time way, is a password more than a destiny. Watch how the demons react. They do not test him. They do not stage a coup. They line up. They file complaints. They demand punishments and promotions and customized torments as if Finn is a customer service representative who accidentally got seated at the CEO's desk. It's not loyalty. It's not fear. It's compliance with a system that clearly predates whoever happens to be wearing the tie. And Finn, bless him, tries to be good. He tries to grant merciful requests, to reduce suffering, to manage this dimension of eternal screaming, like a well-meaning intern who wandered into the center of time and sat in the wrong swivel chair. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than he is, watching as every compassionate decision gets translated into sanctioned chaos by the underlying machinery. Think about that for a second. The moment Finn signs a form, the Nightosphere enforces it with perfect, horrifying efficiency. When he refuses to be cruel, the realm itself pushes back, twisting his reluctance into gridlock, rebellion, and more elaborate torment. The throne doesn't grant power so much as plug you into an existing circuit. You are not the lightning. You are the switch, This is where the comedy hits as a pattern interrupt. You have Finn in a tiny tie trying to hold a clipboard while demons scream about wait times, like someone merged a DMV with a pit of cosmic despair. It's funny, it's light. And then you notice what the joke is hiding. The Nightosphere doesn't care who you are, only that you keep the process moving. We're going to sit with that implication. If one wrong wish, one wrong word, can make a kid from Ooo the sovereign of damnation, then authority here is not sacred. It's exploitative. It's flexible. It's a loophole waiting to be used. And if power can shift this easily on the surface, what does that say about the contracts buried deeper down, in the fine print no one is supposed to read? Hold that question, because next, we're going to peel back those clauses and see how the Nightosphere writes reality in ink you can't quite see until it's already dried on your soul. Rules written in fire, the hidden logic of the Nightosphere. Let's start with the obvious that the show never actually says out loud. The Nightosphere runs on rules, not vibes, not pure chaos. Rules written in fire, etched straight into the reality of that universe so deeply that even demons flinch when they brush against them. Here is the thing. Every nightmare realm in fiction pretends to be wild, but the scary ones are always administrative. In the Nightosphere, authority doesn't just belong to whoever screams the loudest. It's passed like a cursed relay baton through rituals, artifacts, and signatures. Hunson's amulet, Finn reading that incantation, Marceline inheriting rights she never asked for. These are all the same mechanism. Power there is notarized. The crown doesn't sit on your head, it clamps around your soul. Souls, meanwhile, are not just snacks. They are legal objects. When Hunson offers a deal, he isn't only being theatrical, he's invoking a binding contract that the realm itself will enforce. You say yes, you sign, you agree, even by accident, and the Nightosphere hears that consent like a bell. The contract doesn't just live on paper. It lives as a new trajectory in your timeline, a quiet rewrite of what your existence is allowed to become. And the wild part is that the realm backs it up. The Nightosphere behaves like a cosmic enforcement engine. If a contract says you belong there, portals open, gravity tilts, reality roots you back to that center of time-adjacent underworld, no matter how far you run. Think about that for a second. Hunson isn't manually chasing every debtor, the realm itself is collections. But then you get an edge case, Finn, a mortal kid, no demonic lineage, accidentally speaks the right words, and suddenly the whole multiverse of screaming souls has to call him boss. The system bends. It doesn't break. Demons obey, but they also exploit the loophole of his inexperience. The amulet tries to overwrite his desire with its own. The rules hold, yet they strain, and you can feel how precarious that legalistic reality really is. Compared to other hellscapes, the Lich's pure extinction wish, or generic pits of torment, Adventure Time leans hard into legalism and consent. This isn't just fire and chains, it's forms, promotions, waiting lines, and technicalities. It's less, you were dragged here, and more, you clicked I agree on a document you didn't read, and now the universe won't let you undo it. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the horror is funny until you realize it's also accurate. Hunson, then, is not just a monster, he is a cosmic bureaucrat. He is not free. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than he is, weaponizing contracts that also quietly shackle him. When he eats souls, when he enforces terms, he's following procedure as much as appetite. And if there are rules, there are loopholes. There have to be. Somewhere off-screen, you can almost imagine counter-contracts, escape clauses, a perfectly worded agreement that could free a soul or even alter how the Nightosphere operates at its core. The question is not whether those clauses exist, it's who exactly is patient enough and desperate enough to go looking for them in the dark. Is the Nightosphere evil, or just doing its job? So here is the thing. Once you start imagining those loopholes and escape clauses, you hit a much bigger, quieter question that sits under every scream in the Nightosphere. Is this place a sadistic playground for demons, or a grim cosmic utility that the universe grudgingly needs to keep running at all? Let's start with the uncomfortable possibility that the Nightosphere is not a malfunction of reality, but a feature. Every universe, every multiverse, has overflow, rage that never cooled down, guilt that never got faced, souls that burned so hot with desire or violence that you probably do not want them respawning in your local candy kingdom. So where do you put all of that? In Adventure Time, it feels like the answer is, you open a portal, and you let it slide into Hudson Abadir's jurisdiction. Think about that for a second. The Nightosphere might be less evil lair and more cosmic storage unit, crammed with the worst impulses the rest of existence refuses to process. You see it in the way the realm is built. Endless chaos, torture, and screaming, yes, but also lines, forms, promotions, a hierarchy. Finn becomes ruler by accidentally reading the wrong incantation, like he's been handed the world's worst middle management promotion. That is not pure chaos. That is administration. And once you notice that, the torment starts to look different. Is this punishment, purification, or just containment? In some timelines of religion, hell is a courtroom. In others, it is a hospital. In others, it is a landfill. The Nightosphere hovers between all three. Hudson eats souls, but he does it by contract. He demands consent, technically. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound to a role that looks monstrous from the outside and maybe feels boring from the inside. The show keeps undercutting the horror with that specifically Adventure Time way of being silly. Hudson devours souls and also steals Marceline's fries. The realm of eternal torment is also the setting for an awkward dad visit, complete with emotional baggage and passive-aggressive banter. The Nightosphere is terrifying, but it is also petty, mundane, almost domestic, and that tension makes it very hard to call it purely evil or purely functional. Because what if the real problem is not the Nightosphere's existence, but the fact that Ooo needs it at all? If reality has to offload its unresolved guilt and dangerous power somewhere, that means the wider universe is already cracked. The Nightosphere becomes a symptom, not the disease, a pressure valve for a world that refuses to face what it has done. And as you drift with that thought, you can feel the next question forming in the dark. If this is a storage unit, what happens when someone finally opens all the doors and lets everything out again? Hudson's hunger, soul-eating as cosmic metaphor. So when those doors finally swing open, what actually comes out first isn't fire or screaming or some huge cosmic laser. It's a mouth. Hudson's mouth opening too wide, shadows bending inward, as if reality itself is being inhaled. Let's start with how the show frames that hunger. When Hudson consumes a soul, it isn't ritualistic or solemn. It's casual, administrative. He just opens, and the victim stretches into him, their colors pulled off like wet paint, their existence compressed into a single gulp. No candles, no choir, just a bored dad, clocking in, devouring someone's eternity like it's a snack he found in the fridge. Think about that for a second. In Adventure Time, the end of your soul can look like someone absent-mindedly cleaning their plate. Here is the thing. That casualness is the horror. He is not cackling. He is not performing evil. He is doing what, in his mind, the rules say he does. Souls go in, power comes out. Paperwork gets processed. And emotionally, that maps disturbingly well onto a parent or authority figure who takes and never gives anything nourishing back. The fries scene with Marceline is the tiny domestic version of soul eating. He doesn't just eat her food, he eats the moment, the memory, the chance for connection. He consumes what she offers, then leaves her with nothing but resentment and a song. We're going to zoom out for a second, because in the Nightosphere, this isn't just a personality quirk, it's an economy. If souls are food, then the entire realm runs on devouring. Every contract, every promotion, every screaming line of the damned is about turning people into fuel so the system can keep existing one more cosmic day. The universe of the Nightosphere is built like a power plant that only burns identity. No one is really rehabilitated there. They are processed, recycled, metabolized into more authority for whoever sits on the throne. Pattern interrupt. What if Hudson is starving too? The more you look at him, the more his hunger reads like a void in a suit. He has power, but it's never enough. He has a realm, but it's never stable. He has a daughter, but he keeps trying to own her instead of love her. That endless appetite starts to feel less like pure malice and more like a black hole of neglect. Someone who was never taught how to be full, only how to take. He can reshape his corner of reality, but he cannot imagine a self that isn't defined by what he has consumed. And Marceline, caught in that gravitational field, carries an echo of it. Half demon, half vampire, she literally feeds on color, on the surface of reality. She drains, but she also sings. She wants connection, but she has inherited extraction. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the show lets her stand at the edge of her father's hunger and ask a quiet, terrifying question. If you were raised by a mouth, can you choose to become something else? We'll follow that question next as Marceline tries to rewrite the contract written in her blood. The Fries incident. Tiny moment. Massive wound. So when we talk about rewriting a contract written in blood, we don't start with some giant cosmic rebellion. Let's start with something smaller. Saltier. A little paper boat of fries on a cheap plastic tray and a dad who eats them without asking. You remember the scene. Marceline has this little ordinary meal. It's not a magic sword, not a cursed amulet, not a portal to the center of time. It's just food. Her food. And Hudson swoops in, cheerful, oblivious, and devours her fries while explaining himself, justifying filling the air with his voice while he empties her plate. He is not screaming, he is not roaring with demonic power. He is holding ketchup. The camera doesn't explode into fire and torment. It lingers on her face. That tiny flinch, the way her eyes go distant, like she's watching a whole alternate timeline where he doesn't do this, where he notices her hunger before his own. There is sadness there, resignation, the exhaustion of someone who has already learnt the rules. In this universe, his appetite is the main character, and she is background. Here is the thing, it's just fries. But it's also everything. It's every birthday missed, every promise broken, every time a parent's desire to feel good in the moment steamrolls a child's quiet need. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the show takes something comically mundane and lets it echo like a cosmic law. In the Nightosphere, your needs are negotiable, his are not. We're going to zoom out for a second, because the fries are not an isolated incident. They are a thesis statement. The Nightosphere runs on consumption, souls, energy, attention, all pulled into this demonic bureaucracy, where contracts are just formalized hunger. Hudson eats lives with paperwork. Of course, he also eats his daughter's lunch without thinking. Same rule, smaller scale. Think about that for a second. In a realm built on taking, even a father-daughter meal becomes an act of erasure. There is no big magical blast here. No visible scar across the multiverse. Just an emotional paper cut that never fully closes. Marceline remembers this. She carries the memory like a low-volume soundtrack under her existence. Proof that the worst wounds from the Nightosphere are not the claws or the chains or the screaming pits. They are the moments when you realize you are not being seen, even by the person who literally helped create your reality. And maybe as you're drifting towards sleep, you can feel your own fries incident surfacing. The toy thrown away without asking. The secret repeated as a joke. The conversation where someone talked over you and never noticed the silence that followed. Tiny moments, massive wounds. This is the quiet horror of the Nightosphere. It teaches you to doubt your right to be fed, to be heard, to be real. And the next question, the one we'll follow, is how Marceline takes that plate back, how you rewrite a universe that keeps eating you. Marceline's songs as maps of the Nightosphere. So when the universe has taught you that even your hunger is negotiable, where do you put all that noise? Marceline doesn't file a complaint in the Nightosphere's Office of Eternal Grievances. She writes a song. Here is the thing. Every time she plays, she is drawing a map of a place she refuses to live in, but can never fully leave. Let's start with, Daddy, why did you eat my fries? On paper, it's about stolen food. In reality, it's an audit of abandonment. They weren't even that good, she sings. And you can hear the Nightosphere in that line, the casual cruelty, the way cosmic power shrugs while it devours your small human wishes. It's not just a dad eating fries, it's the center of time in her life, being busy with other souls, other contracts, other desires, while her plate goes cold. Then there's I'm Just Your Problem. That song is a border crossing. She's yelling at Princess Bubblegum, but she's also yelling past her, into the multiverse, at a father who treats love as a legal loophole. I shouldn't have to prove anything to you. Simple declarative. Underneath it, a reality where affection is always under review, where the rules of being loved are never written down, just enforced. Think about that for a second. A demon lord who needs signatures, and a daughter who can't get a yes without a fight. Her music blends anger, sadness, and longing the way the Nightosphere blends horror and bureaucracy. Screams, but in a line. Torment, but with paperwork. When she drags a chord and lets it ring, that's the howl. When she mutters a throwaway joke between verses, that's the form you didn't read before you signed. Pain wrapped in routine. We're going to see the same pattern. Big emotions delivered in small, repetitive melodies, like a cosmic office ringtone for unresolved childhood. And notice how often she sings far away from portals and fire and screaming souls. A quiet room. An empty hill. A messy living room with Finn half asleep on the couch. Her songs are self-exorcisms performed off-site, a way to let the Nightosphere pass through her without reopening the gate. She can't wish her past away, but she can reroute it, measure it in verses instead of eternities. The show leans into that contrast. Soft, almost mumbled performances talking about a loud, terrifying place. You're hearing a war report delivered as a lullaby. It's intimate, even cozy, which is exactly why it works for you lying there in the dark. The universe of her trauma is huge. The room she sings in is small. If the Nightosphere has a soundtrack, it isn't the roar of the damned. It's Marceline's voice, echoing through all the spaces her father never filled, tracing the negative shape of the love that wasn't there. And the real question is, what happens when that voice stops mapping absence and starts redrawing the borders of the underworld itself? Walking through Marceline's memories, not just hell, so when that voice starts redrawing borders, it doesn't begin out there in the cosmic fire pits. It starts in here, in the private Nightosphere Marceline has been carrying around since she was a kid, with a hand-me-down axe and no consistent parent. Here is the thing. The show gives you a literal hell, with contracts and screaming and a center-of-time-adjacent multiverse bureaucracy. But Marceline's real underworld is made of memories. She doesn't have to open a portal. She just has to close her eyes at the wrong moment, and she's back in one of those looping punishments the universe wrote directly onto her timeline. The fries, the empty room after Hunson leaves again, the reunions that arrive 3 emotional years too late. Let's start with the fries because Adventure Time does this in that specifically Adventure Time way, where the smallest object becomes the entire architecture of a relationship. That plate is a room. You can walk into it. The emotional climate is greasy, fluorescent, lukewarm. Hudson eats her fries, and it is not about the food. It is about power and attention and the casual revelation that your desires are optional side quests in someone else's existence. Think about that for a second. It's a 2-second gag, but for Marceline, it's a chamber she keeps getting dragged back into every time she feels ignored. Other memories are different rooms with different weather systems. There's the separation room, where the air tastes like dust and old cardboard boxes, and the only sound is the echo of boots walking away. There's the reunion room, warmer but off, like someone turned the color saturation up on reality and forgot to fix the underlying script. You can feel that, right? You've had those reunions where everyone smiles, but all the unsaid rules and old contracts are still taped to the walls. We're going to map that onto the Nightosphere's architecture, because the parallels are not subtle. The external realm is all twisting paths, nonsensical corridors, doors that open onto new torments. Marceline's mind works the same way. One hallway leads to a door labeled Dad, but when she opens it, she falls through a trapdoor into abandonment, age 7. Another door is an old argument about trust, but the windows in that room look directly into better times. Her and Simon, her and PB, moments when love actually followed the rules. So when she confronts Hudson, it looks like a boss fight, demon versus half-demon at the edge of a cosmic pit. But emotionally, it's a guided tour through her own internal underworld. She is not just yelling at a monster, she is navigating the paperwork of her past, reading the fine print on every wish she ever had for a normal dad, and realizing how those wishes bent her reality. And here is the quiet twist. You have a Nightosphere too. Not with lava, maybe, but with those rooms you avoid, the apology you never gave, the friend you ghosted, the moment a parent chose work over you, and you decided what that meant about your worth. You don't visit often, until something drags you back, a song, a smell, a late-night thought that refuses to dissolve. In this video, as we drift deeper into Marceline's realm, we're also drifting into that shared human underworld, the place where memory, power, and desire collide. Because the next question is not just how she escapes the Nightosphere's contracts, but whether any of us can rewrite the architecture of a hell we helped build inside ourselves. Finn and Jake's Nightosphere trips. Comedy in the abyss. So when we talk about Marceline trying to rewrite her personal hell, we also have to talk about the 2 tourists who keep accidentally booking return trips there. Finn and Jake do not belong in the Nightosphere, and that is exactly why their episodes down there feel like a nightmare vacation package. All-inclusive terror, complimentary absurdity. Let's start with It Came from the Nightosphere. You have Finn, full of heroic desire and zero legal training, wishing Marceline would reconcile with her dad, and reading an incantation he absolutely does not understand. One portal later, Hudson is loose in Ooo, and the Nightosphere is framed through Finn's eyes. He's scared, confused, but also arguing about stolen fries, like this is just a slightly more intense family dinner. Here is the thing. His emotional register never quite matches the cosmic horror on screen, and that mismatch is the joke. When we finally go inside the Nightosphere, in Return to the Nightosphere, and Daddy's Little Monster, the realm itself becomes a visual punchline. Demons are grotesque, but in that specifically Adventure Time way, where a screaming skull is also wearing a tiny tie, and a soul-sucking monster is waiting in an orderly line. Reality is melting, but there are clipboards. There is torture, but also bureaucracy. Think about that for a second. The show takes classic hell imagery and wraps it in office culture, turning existential dread into something you could, in theory, file a complaint about. The art direction leans into this. You get impossible Escher staircases and rivers of lava, but you also get Finn and Jake in business slacks navigating promotions, memos, and performance reviews. It should be pure horror. It isn't. Because every time the universe starts to feel too big and hostile, Jake cracks a dry comment, or Finn tries to brute force the rules with a heroic speech that sounds like it wandered in from a completely different genre. Humor here works as a pattern interrupt. The tension climbs, the Nightosphere flexes its power, you feel the underworld pressing in, and then Jake is casually stretching into a briefcase, or Finn is yelling at a demon like it's a rude neighbor. The fear doesn't vanish. It just gets suspended, hovering in the background like a bad notification you keep swiping away. You laugh, but your nervous system remembers the screaming. And because Finn and Jake are outsiders, every trip is temporary by design. They drop in, break the system a little, rescue Marceline, and bounce back to Ooo, where the sky is blue and time feels linear again. For them, the Nightosphere is a weird detour on the multiverse map. A place you visit, survive, and then tell stories about. For Marceline, it's ancestry. It's home and prison layered on top of each other. We're going to come back to that difference, because beneath the jokes, the realm always leaves fingerprints. Finn's brush with rulership, Jake's memories of demonic paperwork, Marceline's transformations under her dad's control. Each visit carves a tiny groove in the timeline, a reminder that this underworld is never fully gone. It's just waiting. One bad wish, one careless portal away from bleeding back into their lives again. Paperwork and pain. The Nightosphere's moral gray zone. So when we say the Nightosphere is always waiting, we're not just talking about portals and tentacles. We're talking about a place that has a filing system for agony. A realm where torment runs on forms, signatures, and line items in a ledger instead of just fire and brimstone. Let's start with that image of a twisted office. You've seen it. Demons in queues, floating clipboards, some poor creature getting yelled at by a supervisor with 6 mouths. Here is the thing. Once evil is organized, documented, and routinized, it stops looking like wild chaos and starts looking like administration. Like someone somewhere decided that suffering should be processed the way you process expense reports. Think about that for a second. Hansen Abadir sits at the top of this cosmic workflow. He writes the contracts, sets the rules, defines what counts as a fair soul deal in this warped universe. But most of the actual cruelty you see, it's carried out by mid-level demons just following procedure. Stamp this soul. Toss that one into the torment dimension. Approve this eternal punishment with a signature that glows green. The question is, are they morally different from Hansen, or are they just extensions of his desire, his policy, his power? We're going to slide quietly into that hierarchy. The demons you see shuffling papers, enforcing the rules of the Nightosphere, rarely seem personally invested. They're not cackling masterminds. They are functionaries. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than you itself. And that's almost more terrifying, because it means you can have endless harm without anyone waking up in the morning and actively wishing to be cruel. The presence of contracts and fine print suggests a justice system in that specifically Adventure Time way. Souls are there because they agreed to be there. There are clauses, loopholes, technicalities. When Finn becomes ruler just by reading the wrong incantation, the realm doesn't revolt on moral grounds. It updates the paperwork. The universe doesn't ask if he deserves power. It just recognizes that the form was, regrettably, filled out correctly. That's not far from real-world systems, where harm is done through procedure rather than overt malice. A denied claim. A foreclosure notice. A rubber-stamped approval that ruins a life 3 timelines down the line. No villain monologue. Just a process flowing smoothly, efficiently, coldly, like a conveyor belt at the center of time. And that's the unsettling heart of the Nightosphere. It might be less about wild, theatrical evil and more about what happens when cruelty becomes standard operating procedure, when torment is just how the universe works in that office. Because if that's true, then the real horror isn't Hunson's teeth or the lava rivers. It's the idea that anyone, even someone like Marceline, could be slotted into that workflow, could inherit it. And the show quietly asks, what happens when the paperwork of pain lands on the desk of someone who actually cares? If you visited safely, what would the Nightosphere show you? And here is the thing about paperwork. Once you notice the form in your hand, you start wondering what's written on it for you. If the Nightosphere can shuffle torment-like files across a desk, then somewhere in that infinite cabinet, there's a folder with your name on it, not as a threat, as a record. Let's start by doing something the show never quite lets Finn and Jake do calmly. Imagine you could visit the Nightosphere with absolute cosmic diplomatic immunity, total safety. You're not a victim, not a ruler, not even a soul on the menu. You're a ghost in the system. You drift past the lava rivers, past the screaming queues, past the demons arguing about promotion metrics, and nothing can touch you. You can see everything. Nothing can see you. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the realm doesn't talk. It just loads your file. Think about that for a second. If the Nightosphere could read your soul the way Hunson reads contracts, what would it quietly pull up first? Not your worst crime against the universe. Not some dramatic, end-of-timeline catastrophe. Probably something small, intimate, unfinished. Maybe it would replay an old argument you walked away from too fast. The moment when you hung up, or closed the door, or sent the text that ended the conversation instead of healed it. No lava, no screaming. Just you, watching two younger versions of yourself fail to say, "I'm scared," and saying, "Whatever," instead. Or it might show you a missed apology. That friend you slowly ghosted because their sadness felt heavier than you had power to carry. The teacher you snapped at. The parent you brushed off. A scene where nothing technically terrible happened, but you can still feel the echo of the choice in your chest. Like low-level Nightosphere static. Maybe it's a moment of selfishness that still stings when you let your mind get quiet. Taking credit for someone else's idea. Laughing along when a joke went too far. Choosing the easier timeline for you, knowing it bent reality a little harsher for someone else. The Nightosphere wouldn't accuse you. It would just highlight the line in the contract you never read, because we're going to notice that this is exactly what it did to Marceline and Hunson. Long before she could name abandonment or resentment, the Nightosphere had already filed those feelings under her. It turned their unresolved conflict into architecture. Hallways shaped like grudges, doors that only open if you admit you're angry, a ruler's throne that feels like a time-out chair for a child who never got an explanation. But this visit you're on now, this is not a trial. It's a tour. Whatever memory, regret, or fear bubbles up as you listen, you don't have to wrestle with it. You can just watch it on the Nightosphere's little internal monitor, acknowledge, "Yeah, that's in my file," and then let it drift away as the scene fades, like closing a folder and sliding it back onto the shelf at the center of time. Still part of your existence, no longer on your desk tonight. And as those images dim, the question becomes, if the Nightosphere runs on these files, what happens when someone inside it decides to start editing? Hunson as culture, not just character. So when we talk about editing the file, we have to admit something slightly uncomfortable. Hunson Abadir is the file. He isn't just a bad dad wandering through a neutral universe. He is the Nightosphere's values given teeth and a briefcase. Efficiency over empathy. Contracts over conversation. Hunger over care. If the realm itself could stand up, put on a tie and complain about overtime, it would look a lot like him. Here is the thing. In this video, we're going to keep saying Hunson like he's one person making choices, But the Nightosphere has been making that same choice for a very long time. You see it in the lines of demons waiting to be processed, in the forms, in the way a mispronounced incantation can accidentally make Finn the ruler because the paperwork says so. The rules come first. The souls are just inputs. Think about that for a second. In a realm like that, mercy isn't just rare, it's inefficient. So imagine living at the center of time for that one corner of the multiverse, not as a cosmic wishmaster, but as the guy who has to keep the torment flowing on schedule. Long-term exposure to that reality is a kind of radiation. It strips off anything soft. If Hunson ever had gentler instincts, the Nightosphere would have filed them as a liability and audited them out of his existence. Every promotion, every contract signed, every soul devoured is the realm teaching him. This is how you survive here. We're going to slow down with that image of him eating Marceline's fries. On Earth, in Ooo, it reads like petty cruelty. A father choosing his desire over his kid's feelings. In the Nightosphere, it reads like breakfast, a resource consumed by the person with the power to take it. Other demons don't look at him and see a monster. They see a competent administrator, a boss who keeps the torment quotas up and the rebellion rates down. Is that cruelty or just good management in Hell's HR manual? And that's where Marceline's anger gets complicated. She is not just mad at one man who disappointed her. She is mad at an entire world that trained him to see her as collateral. Half of her is literally plugged into that world's timeline, its hunger, its rules. The Nightosphere isn't just her dad's office, it's her inheritance. Resenting Hunson means, at some level, resenting a part of her own existence, which is a very specific kind of cosmic family drama. Pattern interrupt. What if the Nightosphere changed first? If the culture ever shifted, if torment stopped being the default, if contracts started building care instead of debt, Hunson would face a terrifying wish he's never had to make. Adapt, grow empathy, learn a new power language, or get replaced by someone even more efficient at being awful. The realm will always have a ruler. The only real question is what that ruler is allowed to be. And somewhere, just ahead of us, is the moment where that question stops being hypothetical. Inheritance of the underworld. Could Marceline rule the Nightosphere? And somewhere, just ahead of us, is the moment where that question stops being hypothetical. Because here is the thing. The Nightosphere doesn't just need a ruler in the abstract. It already has a designated heir, a literal, contractual, demonic next of kin. Marceline isn't just Hunson's kid emotionally. In the cosmic paperwork of this universe, she is a living clause, a contingency plan with a bass guitar. Let's start with the obvious. She is half demon, explicitly tied to the Nightosphere through blood, power, and whatever infernal HR department handles dependent beneficiaries. We've seen how absurdly procedural this reality is. Finn reads one incantation wrong, and suddenly he's the ruler, complete with a promotion chain and rebellious middle managers. If the realm will accept a confused human boy in a hat, what do you think it would do with Hunson's actual daughter? Think about that for a second. Fans read those hints. The amulet, Hunson's pride in her potential, the way portals open for her, as evidence that she is not just eligible, she is pre-approved. In some timelines, in some branch of the multiverse, there is probably a Nightosphere where Marceline did say yes, where she took the desk, signed the forms, and became the new center of tormenting power. The show never shows us that timeline directly, but it leaves a Marceline-shaped negative space where it could exist. And yet, everything about her values is a problem for the current system. She runs on empathy, creativity, and stubborn independence. She writes songs about abandonment and healing, not quarterly soul quotas. The Nightosphere runs on contracts, debt, and normalized screaming. She is not cruel. She is not indifferent. She is just someone who has spent a very long time surviving other people's rules and refusing to let them define her existence. So if she did inherit, what happens? In that specifically Adventure Time way, the funniest answer is also the most profound. Maybe she doesn't shut it down. Maybe she unions it. Mandatory breaks between eternal torments. Demons required to attend feelings workshops. A waiting room where instead of being flayed by paperwork, souls get guided through their own guilt like a cosmic group therapy session with better snacks. Or she weaponizes art. Imagine a Nightosphere where the primary torture is being forced to sit with your own unresolved memories while Marceline plays live soundtrack, not to hurt you, but to make you finally feel it. Less hellfire, more exposure therapy. Less punishment, more extremely uncomfortable growth. But here is the cost. Ruling the place means being its face, signing off on every contract, approving every consequence. Even if she reforms the rules, she becomes the one who decides which pain is necessary. How long before that hardens into justification? How long before "I'm doing this to help" starts to sound like her father's "it's just my job"? We're going to leave that question open, because the show does. Marceline's greatest act of rebellion might be to never take the throne at all, to let the Nightosphere remain a problem she refuses to solve on its terms. And somewhere, in the dark between portals and power transfers, something else is already watching her refusal and adjusting its own plans. Nightosphere versus other underworlds. What makes it unique? And while that watcher is adjusting, let's start zooming out. Because the Nightosphere is not the only underworld in the multiverse of human imagination. You have Dante's Inferno, with its perfect circles of punishment, where every sin is mathematically matched to a very themed torment. You have Hades, a grey bureaucracy of the dead, organized by fate and mythic bloodlines. You have pop culture hells full of fire, pitchforks, and demons whose entire job description is "hurt you forever because you were bad." They're about sin, judgment, and cosmic moral order. Here is the thing. The Nightosphere does not really care if you were bad. It cares if you signed. It cares if you slipped for one tired second and agreed to a deal you did not fully understand. Hudson Abadir is less ancient curse and more predatory lender. The torment is contractual. The pain is itemized. It isn't divine wrath. It's bad paperwork echoing through eternity. Think about that for a second. Where classic hells are cathedrals of punishment, the Nightosphere is a corporate campus that forgot it was supposed to be fun. There are lines. There are promotions. There is a throne that can be transferred because Finn read the wrong words at the wrong time. Souls aren't just damned. They're managed, filed, routed up and down a demonic org chart that no one fully understands but everyone is crushed beneath. And visually, Adventure Time doubles down on that dissonance. Other underworlds are dark, gothic, solemn. The Nightosphere is bright orange rivers of torment, neon green skies, screaming faces mashed into a landscape that looks like a doodle on the back of a high school notebook. You get absurd jokes, like demons arguing over workplace procedures, layered right next to a daughter watching her father literally eat her fries, and with them, a tiny piece of her trust. It's hell rendered in that specifically Adventure Time way. Loud, colorful, and quietly devastating. So while Hades or Dante's hell often feel far away, locked in mythic time, the Nightosphere feels uncomfortably adjacent to your daily reality. We're going to a place where your soul isn't weighed on golden scales. It's trapped in an infinite meeting that should have been an email, where the authority figure isn't a flaming archangel, but a dad who never reads your band flyers and only shows up to collect on applause. That's why this realm works as a mirror for modern anxieties. Its burnout as eternal landscape, its fine print as metaphysical law, its emotionally distant authority figures, scaled up to cosmic power, still insisting, It's just my job. While they literally devour your existence, the horror is not only that you suffer, the horror is that your suffering is technically compliant. In the end, the Nightosphere doesn't stand out because it is the scariest hell. It stands out because it feels like a sideways reflection of our own universe's worst timelines. A hell of contracts, of missed calls, of love buried under policy. And the real question is not just who rules that domain, but who, quietly, benefits from keeping it exactly the way it is. The fine print of fear, how contracts shape destiny. And here is the thing. In a hell that looks this much like home, pain doesn't arrive as fire and pitchforks. It arrives as paperwork. In the Nightosphere, a signature can matter more than a scream. You can howl, you can beg, you can try to claw your way out of this cosmic call center of despair. But once you sign, the realm owns a piece of your future, and it files that future away like any other asset. Let's start with that idea of ownership. In our universe, you feel it when you accept a job you already know is wrong, or when you say yes to a relationship that curdles your stomach, or when you take a loan because you're tired of being scared. One decision, one moment of consent, and suddenly your timeline bends around it. You wake up 3 years later and realize that "I'll just do this for a while" has quietly rewritten your entire existence. Think about that for a second. Hudson doesn't need to chase you with chains when a dotted line will do. The show leans into this in that specifically Adventure Time way, where the horror is played as bureaucracy. Finn becomes ruler of the Nightosphere not through conquest, but by reading the wrong incantation, effectively signing the wrong form. Authority transfers like a misrouted email. That's the joke. But it's also the nightmare. Because the rules don't care whether you understood them, they only care that you triggered them. So can these contracts ever be broken, renegotiated, outsmarted? Technically, yes. Practically, it's like trying to argue with gravity. You'd need a character who understands the rules better than the demons who live by them. Someone willing to read the fine print instead of just screaming at the headline. You'd need precision, patience, a willingness to sacrifice something now for a freer version of yourself in some later corner of time. In other words, you'd need the exact opposite mindset of the desperate person who signed in the first place. From Hudson's perspective, none of this is monstrous. Not exactly. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than Ooo itself. To him, these deals are a fair trade, a sport, and a necessary mechanism all at once. You get what you desire in the moment. He gets what you become after. The Nightosphere keeps running, fueled by a multiverse of tiny, panicked wishes for quick relief. And yet, if there are rules, there are edges. If there is fine print, there are loopholes. Somewhere in this contract-shaped universe, there are characters willing to read every clause, to twist the Nightosphere's own logic back on itself. We're going to follow them next, into the quiet possibility that this hell can be hacked, and that the signatures binding it might not be as permanent as they look. Loopholes in hell. How Adventure Time plays with cosmic rules. So the contract ink is barely dry on the Nightosphere's walls, and already the universe is doing something mischievous. It's letting people poke holes in hell, not by punching harder, but by reading the fine print out loud. Let's start with Finn accidentally becoming ruler of the Nightosphere. He doesn't conquer it in some heroic blaze. He just reads the wrong incantation, signs the wrong page, and suddenly the crown passes to a confused human boy in a silly hat. Authority in this realm of torment flips not because of cosmic power, but because the paperwork says so. The demons have to obey. They grumble, they riot, but they follow the rules, because the rules are older than their teeth. Here is the thing. Every time someone bends those rules, the Nightosphere blinks. Marceline's amulet, for example, doesn't just boost her demonic power. It routes her through the system lets her tap into her father's authority without becoming him. When Finn puts it on, the realm goes haywire. The amulet follows the letter of its enchantment, maximize demonic potential, while completely ignoring the original emotional intent. That's a loophole wearing jewelry. And then there are the magical interventions that feel like clerical errors in the multiverse. A portal misaimed, a contract misunderstood, a soul technically not owned because someone forgot to sign on the dotted line. Each of these tiny edge cases points to something important. The Nightosphere is not omnipotent. It is terrifying, but it is not the top of the food chain. It is bound by a higher, more abstract law of the universe that even Hunson Abadir has to respect. He can eat souls, but he still waits for consent through a contract. He can rip open reality, but he still needs the right ritual, the right conditions, the right wording. Think about that for a second. A being who can devour your essence still has to get your signature. So what are those higher laws? You can feel them humming behind the torture and lava. Balance, maybe. Every soul taken, every timeline twisted, has to be counterweighted somewhere else in the multiverse. Consent, definitely. The show keeps returning to this idea that even demons need you to say yes, even if you don't understand what you're saying yes to. And in that specifically Adventure Time way, there's also narrative irony, a cosmic sense of fairness that makes sure any wish, any deal, snaps back with consequences. This is what keeps the Nightosphere from feeling hopelessly oppressive. There is always a crack, a clause, a badly written sentence you can squeeze through. You can't outpunch hell, but you might outinterpret it, and that loops quietly back to you. In this video, we're going to keep talking about demons and contracts, but under that, we're also talking about real systems, bureaucracies, families, expectations that feel inescapable until someone notices the overlooked checkbox. Even in the most rigid reality, there are moments where the rules contradict themselves, where compassion sneaks in through a technicality, where you can wish not for escape, but for leverage. Pattern interrupt. Imagine Hunson Abadir, Lord of the Nightosphere, losing an argument because a teenager found a clause he forgot. That image is ridiculous. It is also the quiet promise of this universe. No power is absolute, no prison is perfectly sealed. Next, we're going to follow how those little cracks widen when emotions, relationships, and very mortal desires start pushing against hell's walls. Emotional gravity wells. Why characters keep returning, so once those cracks appear in hell's paperwork, you start to notice a pattern. People don't just fall into the Nightosphere once. They orbit it. They graze its surface, escape, and then, somehow, the universe tilts and they're right back at the center of time's worst waiting room. Let's start with the obvious reasons they go back. Rescue missions. Finn diving through the portal to pull Jake out of a bad contract, or to drag Marceline's dad back where he belongs. Curiosity. That specifically Adventure Time way where a door labeled "Do Not Open." Literal nightmare dimension is basically an invitation. Accidents. A misread incantation, a wrong amulet, a wish gone sideways. And then the heaviest one, the one you can feel in your chest even as you're falling asleep. Unresolved family business. Here is the thing. Every return trip is framed like it's going to be the same tour through cosmic misery, but it never is. The first time, the Nightosphere is pure chaos, a screaming multiverse landfill of souls and contracts. The next time, we're going to see the bureaucracy behind it. The lines, the promotions, the weirdly earnest demons trying to climb a corporate ladder made of suffering. Another visit, and suddenly we're in Hunson's office, reading the fine print, realizing his power isn't just raw demonic force. It's the rules, the signatures the consent people didn't understand they were giving. Each descent pulls back another layer of reality. You think it's just hell. Then it's a workplace. Then it's a family home Marceline never really had. Think about that for a second. The same realm that eats souls is also where a dad keeps the emotional equivalent of uneaten fries, forever waiting to be explained and never quite repaired. The Nightosphere becomes an emotional gravity well. Once it touches your existence, it keeps bending your timeline back toward it. Finn promises he's done. Marceline swears she's over it. Hansen pretends he doesn't care. They are not lying. They are just caught in a field that pulls on desire, guilt, and unfinished arguments with the same invisible force that pulls comets. And this is where the show quietly stops being about demons and starts being about you. Because who hasn't revisited an old wound like it was a cursed portal? You go back to the toxic friend group, the childhood home, the relationship that felt like a contract you didn't remember signing. Not because it's fun, because some part of you keeps wishing, irrationally, that this time the scene will play out differently. In this video's slow drift through the Nightosphere, that's the real horror and the real comfort. It isn't a place you heroically escape and never see again. It's a place you learn to negotiate with, to set boundaries inside, to transform from the inside out. You don't blow up the underworld. You redraw the contracts. One exhausted conversation, one broken rule, one almost impossible act of grace at a time. And next, we're going to watch what happens when the Nightosphere starts changing back. The Nightosphere is a cosmic recycling center. So when we say the Nightosphere starts changing back, we're not just talking about policy changes or nicer waiting rooms. We're talking about what it is at a cosmic level. Because here is the thing. All the fear, all the guilt, all the malice in the multiverse has to go somewhere. It doesn't just evaporate. It lingers. It clings to timelines like grease on a pan. And the Nightosphere might be the universe's way of finally washing the pan. Let's start with a slightly uncomfortable idea. Imagine every broken promise, every cruel wish, every moment someone in Ooo or beyond chose power over compassion. Those moments leave a residue, not metaphorically. In that specifically Adventure Time way, emotional pollution is real, thick, almost physical. The Nightosphere is where that residue slides, when reality can't hold it anymore, not because reality is kind, but because reality is efficient. So the realm stops looking like a random torture dimension and starts looking like a metaphysical compost heap. Everything rotting, everything steaming, everything technically disgusting, and yet, given enough time, transforming. When Finn accidentally becomes ruler of the Nightosphere, what he sees as chaos and torment might just be the surface layer. The active breakdown, the churning topsoil of the worst parts of souls, being mulched into something else. From the outside, it reads as punishment. Screams, contracts, Hansen Abadir eating souls like snacks the way he once ate Marceline's fries. But if you tilt your head, if you let yourself drift with it for a second, it also reads like digestion. Those contracts? They're the rules that let the universe say, okay, this goes here now. This doesn't get to float around in innocent dreams anymore. The question is whether anything actually good comes out the other side. Do souls change down there? Or does the Nightosphere just chew and chew forever? A stomach with no intestines, no exit, no transformation. We're going to sit with that. Because Adventure Time never gives us a neat conveyor belt of redemption. We don't see a clear before and after chart for the damned. But we do see hints. We see Marceline, half demon, half vampire, refusing to be only what the Nightosphere made available to her. We see Finn walk in, take the crown, and walk out without becoming what the realm expected. Those are tiny data points that suggest the compost does something. That maybe, very slowly, the worst parts of existence get turned into narrative fertilizer for something softer. And then there's Hansen's hunger. On paper, he's a predator, a devourer, the dad you absolutely should not visit on weekends. But if the Nightosphere is a recycling center, he's also an organ. Not evil, not good, just necessary. He concentrates what everyone else refuses to hold. He keeps the rest of reality a little cleaner by eating what would otherwise leak into every timeline. Think about that for a second as you drift. The Nightosphere as a dark stomach in the body of the universe, always digesting what no one else wants to hold, always churning, always gurgling. And if there's a stomach, if there's digestion, then somewhere there has to be an output. Family therapy, but the office is on fire. An output, and right there, in the middle of that cosmic digestive tract, you have a father and daughter trying to talk about their feelings, or at least trying to talk about fries, which is the same topic if you're Hansen Abadir. Here is the thing. For all the screaming souls and flaming corridors, the moments that really hurt in the Nightosphere are the quiet ones where Marceline and her dad actually use words instead of laser mouths. Let's start with the fries. That tiny flashback where Hansen eats Marceline's fries is not just a joke about demonic snacking. It is a thesis statement. He doesn't just take her food. He takes the last small comfort of a scared kid in a collapsing universe, and then acts confused when she is furious centuries later. No portal, no contract, just a dad who cannot imagine that his desire has consequences. Think about that for a second. In a realm built on explicit deals, the wound that lasts the longest is the one he never even signed. When they finally talk, really talk, it is often while the Nightosphere is literally trying to kill someone, Marceline yelling at him in front of rivers of lava, Hansen shrugging, half defensive, half proud, as if being the center of time for all torment is a solid LinkedIn entry. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than himself, and by a personality that treats relationships like another resource to harvest. And the realm amplifies all of it. Every argument echoes across a multiverse of panicked souls. Every "you never listened to me" bounces off mountains of contracts written in blood. The Nightosphere turns normal family therapy volume up to cosmic stadium levels so that when Marceline says, "You ate my fries," it lands with the power of a curse. In that specifically Adventure Time way, a petty memory becomes a gravitational center for centuries of resentment. But we're going to slow down and notice the smaller gestures. Hansen trying to compliment her music, even when he clearly doesn't get it. The way he backs off just a little when she draws a boundary about her friends. The awkward, almost human disappointment in his voice when she rejects his attempts to give her a promotion in the realm. These are not enough. They clash violently with his pattern of neglect, his casual soul-eating, his refusal to step out of his own desire for power. Here is the unsettling question. Does the Nightosphere want them to heal? A reconciled Hansen, a Marceline at peace with her past, might be bad business. Less rage, fewer loopholes, less raw emotional fuel to keep the realm gurgling. The place runs on imbalance. Therapy is a kind of rebellion. And yet, even here, they keep reaching. Badly, incompletely, but genuinely. Two flawed beings in the worst possible office, trying to file one honest feeling through miles of burning paperwork. As you drift, hold on to that. Even in the loudest hell, someone might still be quietly learning how to say, "I'm sorry," and almost mean it. Nightosphere dreams. How it haunts Ooo from afar, and once you've had one almost honest feeling in the Nightosphere, it doesn't just stay there. It leaks, it echoes, it follows you home like ash in your hair, after a fire, showing up in places it technically shouldn't be able to reach. Let's start in Ooo, far away from the official portals and screaming cubicles. You feel the Nightosphere in episodes where no one says its name. When Finn panics about turning into a monster again after Dad's dungeon. When Marceline flinches at the word Dad in a casual conversation. When Hansen's contracts get mentioned offhand, like radioactive paperwork that's still glowing in the drawer. The realm is off-screen, but the consequences are still walking around, talking, joking, pretending they're fine. Here is the thing. Once a reality like that touches you, it doesn't go away. It just changes medium. The Nightosphere becomes dream logic, nightmares. You see it in Marceline's songs, which are basically lullabies for her own ghosts. You see it in Finn's anxious visions of losing control, of becoming something with too many teeth and not enough choice. He is not in the Nightosphere. He is not even near a portal, and yet his mind is replaying its imagery, like a rerun that won't stop airing at 3 in the morning. Think about that for a second. The Nightosphere does not need to send demons to Ooo to haunt people. It has already installed itself as mental wallpaper. The long corridors, the lines, the feeling that the rules are written somewhere, but no one will show you the page. That is how fear works in this universe. Not just jump scares, but a quiet conviction that there is a cosmic office where your worst impulses are being carefully filed. We're going to ask the obvious question. Is the Nightosphere actively reaching out, or is it just living rent-free in everyone's head? The show never gives us a clean answer in that specifically Adventure Time way. Sometimes it feels like pure psychology, trauma replaying itself, power imbalances turned into demons with clipboards. Other times the timing is too perfect, the dreams too pointed, like the realm is nudging the timeline, whispering through cracks in reality, reminding its former visitors that their contract was never fully emotional terminated. But this is also just us. Our version of the Nightosphere is hospitals, breakups, childhood homes, that one conversation we wish we could rewrite, like a wish in front of a cosmic judge. You leave the place, time passes, and then it shows up again, in a dream where the hallway is too long and the door won't open, and you wake up with your heart racing even though nothing actually happened. As you drift now, your mind becomes a tiny Ooo at the center of time. Portals opening to classrooms, bedrooms, parking lots, imagined multiverse dungeons you've never really walked through. None of them are physically here. All of them are available. And the Nightosphere of your own memories does what it always does. It waits, very patiently, for you to wander through one more time, so you can see that the power was never only in the place. It was in the way you carried it back with you. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of this dream, the portals themselves are watching. Can the Nightosphere be redeemed? So the portals are watching, the memories are looping, and the Nightosphere is just waiting. That's what it does. It waits for more fear, more contracts, more screaming paperwork to slide across the cosmic desk. But here is the thing. If a realm can wait, if it can respond, if it can bend around desire and consent and signatures, can it also change? Let's start with how deeply baked in its role seems. The Nightosphere is not just a bad neighborhood, it's more like a metaphysical department in the universe's bureaucracy. Hunson Abadir doesn't merely enjoy torment, he manages it. He has forms, promotions, a hierarchy, a whole reality that runs on fine print, and the power of, you agreed to this. Technically, in that specifically Adventure Time way, the show frames it less as a cartoon hell and more as a cosmic service provider. Souls want power, or escape, or a shortcut, and the Nightosphere says, we can help with that. Sign here. So if it exists to catch every misdirected wish and every desperate bargain in the multiverse, is it locked into that function by design? Or could the center of this underworld timeline pivot? The way Prismo's time room can be both prison and hangout at the same time. Think about that for a second. If the universe has a place for waste, for pain, for unresolved desire, what happens if you redeem the place that holds it? We're going to walk through a few hypothetical renovations. New leadership is the obvious one. We've seen Finn temporarily become ruler just by reading the wrong incantation, and the realm doesn't implode. It just reformats around his incompetence. Demons still queue. Torment still happens. The rules persist. Leadership alone might be like changing the manager at a haunted call center. The phones still ring. Then there's rewriting the contracts themselves, turning every soul bond into something more like informed consent, or even mutual aid. Imagine Hudson forced to explain, in plain language, every consequence before a signature. The line would get shorter. The Nightosphere might grow quieter, but redemption has a cost. Demons are not freelancers. They are structural. Their existence, their food chain, their promotion ladder, all depend on the flow of suffering and deals. If the system becomes kinder, what happens to beings who were literally shaped by unkindness? Do they evolve into something else? Or do they starve, like predators in a suddenly herbivorous ecosystem? This is where Marceline and Hudson become less a side plot and more a test case. Their relationship does heal, in small, awkward, very real ways. He listens a little more. She forgives a little, but not completely. It is not a total revolution. It's a localized ceasefire. A bright spot. The Nightosphere does not suddenly blossom into a sanctuary when he apologizes for eating her fries. But that apology matters. It proves that even the avatar of this realm can, under pressure, prioritize love over appetite, connection over contract. So maybe their healing is not the catalyst that redeems the Nightosphere, but the glitch that reveals it isn't as inevitable as it pretends. The show never walks us to a reformed underworld. It leaves the realm as a question mark, humming in the dark, waiting. And just past that question mark, there is one more door we have to open. Why we find comfort in cozy underworlds. So we open that last door, and instead of more screaming, there's a couch. A little too lumpy, a little too damp, but still, a place to sit in the middle of the Nightosphere. And here is the thing. That couch is why you're still here, eyes half closed, listening to lore about a demon dad and his cosmic bureaucracy as if it were a bedtime story. Let's start with the distance. You are not in the Nightosphere. You are in your bed, in your room, in your own tiny slice of the multiverse. And the worst thing hunting you right now is maybe a notification. The realm we're describing is safely contained on a screen and in a cartoon, which means you can approach it like you would approach a thunderstorm through a window. You feel the power, you see the chaos, but the glass holds. We're going to name something that Adventure Time understands instinctively. Fear is easier to face when it's wearing a costume. When guilt becomes a literal contract with Hudson Abadir instead of an abstract weight in your chest, you can look at it. When punishment is a lava river with a ticket system, instead of vague dread about your life choices, you can point at it and say, okay, that. I recognize that. Think about that for a second. The show externalizes all the invisible noise in your head and turns it into a landscape you can tour at your own pace. And it does it in that specifically Adventure Time way. The Nightosphere is hell, yes, but it is also a place where Finn accidentally becomes ruler because he read the wrong incantation, where torture coexists with memos, promotions, and a line for the complaint desk. It's terrifying, but everyone is also, somehow on the clock. That combination of cosmic horror and mundane rules turns the underworld into a workplace comedy that just happens to be about souls. This is why, lying there now, you can listen to descriptions of soul-eating and eternal contracts and feel your body relax instead of tense. The darkness has been translated into a language of visual gags, soft colors, and characters who bicker about fries. The universe of fear is still there, but it's framed, stylized, and gently mocked. You're not being asked to relive your worst memories. You're being invited to watch Marceline argue with her dad over emotional negligence and stolen food. And here is the quiet magic of cozy underworlds like this. They become rehearsal spaces, little practice rooms for courage. You watch Finn and Jake descend, mess up the hierarchy, escape. You watch Marceline walk back into the center of time for her own trauma and walk out again. Each episode is a tiny exposure therapy session for existence itself. letting you practice looking directly at hard truths without flinching. One absurd demon, one lava hallway, one lumpy couch at a time. Because there is still one more question the Nightosphere hasn't answered yet, and that unanswered question is where we're heading next. The Nightosphere inside us, personal underworlds. And here is the thing the show never says out loud, but keeps drawing in neon behind every lava hallway and screaming soul contract. The Nightosphere isn't just a dimension, it's a diagram. A shared cartoon map of the places inside you where you send everything you don't want to look at directly. The shame, the hunger, the memories that feel like they might eat you back. Let's start with you for a second. Not you as a heroic protagonist with a sword, but you as a nervous little multiverse of rooms. In one room, there's that mistake you made years ago that still wakes you up at 3 a.m., replaying on an endless screen like Prismo's wall of timelines. In another, there's unresolved grief, sitting in the dark like Hunson at his desk, quietly signing new contracts with your silence. And somewhere, a whole hallway of versions of yourself you judge so harshly you pretend they never existed. Think about that for a second. Everyone has those rooms. Fim has them. Marceline definitely has them. The universe of Adventure Time just externalizes them, in that specifically Adventure Time way, into demons, paperwork, and a dad who literally eats your fries and your soul. It's easier to say, "My father from the Nightosphere hurt me," than to say, "A part of me still believes I deserved that neglect." It's easier to watch a contract get signed in blood than to admit, "I agreed to these rules once, because I was scared of being alone." That is the quiet power of stories like this. We're going to project our inner basements outward, onto cosmic bureaucracies and lava rivers, so we can talk about them without being completely annihilated by their intensity. Hunson becomes the personification of predatory desire and selfish appetite. The cues of screaming demons become the backlog of unprocessed emotions. Finn becoming ruler of the Nightosphere by reading the wrong incantation is every moment you accidentally became responsible for a reality you did not feel ready to hold. But this video is not here to say, your inner Nightosphere is bad. Banish it. It is here to say, what if it's a place you can map? Not a moral failure, a realm, with rules, with geography, with its own strange ecology of fears and old wishes you made about yourself. If Prismo can live at the center of time with a pickle jar and a couch, maybe you can walk through your own underworld with a blanket and a glass of water. So as you listen, let this whole video become a kind of guided tour practice. We descend, we look around, we name what we see, and then we come back. Slowly, kindly. No demon slaying required, just noticing which memories bite and which ones are just loud. Because the Nightosphere inside you is not the end of your existence, it's one region of your internal multiverse, and learning to visit without getting trapped is its own quiet form of power. And there is one last layer to this inner cartography we haven't unfolded yet. One more contract hidden in the fine print of your own desire. And that is where we're heading next. Lonely Thrones. Power, isolation, and Hunson's fate. So when we talk about that last hidden contract inside your own desire, we also have to talk about the one signed-in throne-shaped stone. Because somewhere in that roaring, chaotic Nightosphere, there is a quiet image that keeps repeating across the multiverse of your thoughts. Hunson Abadir, alone on his throne. He is not alone in the literal sense. The realm is packed. Souls are screaming, demons are bargaining. There are lines, forms, promotions, downgrades, an entire underworld HR department humming in the background. But Hunson sits above it all like a black hole in business casual. And the higher you float toward him, the more you notice the distance. No equals, no peers, no one who can look him in the eye and say, "That was messed up," without risking instant annihilation. His voice scrapes through reality, but nothing ever really talks back. Here is the thing. Absolute power in a place like the Nightosphere doesn't just bend reality, It edits your social life out of existence. You can eat souls. You can rewrite contracts. You can rearrange the torture schedule like you're shuffling a deck of cosmic index cards. But you cannot get honest feedback. You cannot get real intimacy. Everyone around you is either terrified of you, dependent on you, or trying to outmaneuver you in some infernal promotion timeline. That is the paradox at the heart of Hansen. Infinite authority, almost no genuine connection. So is he aware of it? Does Hansen feel lonely on that throne, or has he been doing this for so long that the loneliness just calcified into normal? We're going to sit with that for a second. You see him burying himself in work, in hunger, in contracts. In that specifically Adventure Time way where eating your daughter's fries is both a joke and an X-ray of your emotional priorities, he fills every moment with consumption and paperwork, as if silence itself might be the one demon he cannot safely summon. Now compare that to Marceline. Her solitude is sharp, but it is chosen, or at least negotiated. She wanders Ooo, plays bass, makes friends, loses them, writes songs about the gaps in her existence. She steps away from the Nightosphere not because she lacks power there, but because the rules of that universe are written in her father's handwriting. Hansen's isolation is imposed from above by his own crown. Marceline's is a perimeter she draws herself, an attempt to keep the Nightosphere's gravity from collapsing her entire identity. Think about that for a second. Two people alone. One because no one can safely reach him, one because she is afraid of what might happen if they do. One throne at the center of time for a hell dimension. One van, one bass guitar, one bedroom full of memories. Both powerful, both haunted. But only one of them has the option to walk away. And maybe the scariest part of the Nightosphere is not the screaming or the torture, or the endless bureaucracy of damnation. Maybe it's the idea that the ultimate promotion is also the ultimate prison, to be in charge there forever, with no one truly beside you, no one who can say your name without flinching. Because if that is the fate waiting at the end of every infernal contract, we have to ask one last question. Who exactly is the Nightosphere really feeding on? And the next layer of this gets even stranger, because the throne is not the only lonely place in that universe. Softening the screams, how the show protects its viewers, the throne is not the only lonely place in that universe. The corridors are lonely, the cubicles are lonely, even the screaming pits are lonely, and the show knows it can't just drop you into that abyss without a parachute made of jokes and bubblegum colors. Let's start with how it looks. The Nightosphere on paper is cosmic hell, a multiverse landfill of torment, contracts, and devouring desire. But on screen, it's traffic jams of demons in line. It's a soul-eating bureaucrat dad with a briefcase. It's bright greens and reds splashed across reality like someone let a graffiti artist loose at the center of time. The monsters have noodle arms. The torture machines look like they were assembled by an over-caffeinated intern. You're watching existential horror, but it's wearing clown shoes. Here is the thing. That contrast is not an accident. When Hansen Abadir pops in to eat Marceline's fries, the show is quietly telling you, yes, this is a universe where your father can literally consume your soul, but also, he is the kind of guy who steals your snack from the fridge. Simple declarative, vivid metaphor. The apocalypse as a passive-aggressive roommate moment. It lets your brain hold the terror and the comedy in the same hand without dropping either. And then there's the pacing. Nightosphere episodes swing like a pendulum. Finn becomes ruler of the Nightosphere through a procedural mix-up, and before the horror of absolute power can calcify in your chest, we cut to demons chanting, office party style. Intense chase, then a musical break. Threat of eternal torment, then a cutaway to Jake doing something deeply unwise with a briefcase. The show builds pressure, then hands you a release valve. Over and over. Think about that for a second, because in this video, we're doing the same thing. We drift into heavy analysis about cosmic contracts and who the Nightosphere is really feeding on, and then we pull back, talk softly about bedtime, about breathing, about the safety of your room. We're going to walk you up to the edge of the pit, point at the patterns in the darkness, and then step back together before you tumble in. Those step backs matter. They are emotional exits, little doors where you can leave the narrative without pretending the horror was never there. Adventure Time does it with jokes, with Marceline's songs, with the way Finn and Jake can literally open a portal and go home. You can visit the underworld, but the show keeps a rope tied around your waist, and that balance is why the Nightosphere lingers. It lodges in the timeline of your own memories as a place that is scary enough to matter, but gentle enough to revisit. Even now, even as a bedtime story whispered in that specifically Adventure Time way, where the universe is terrible and tender in the same breath, and you are allowed to fall asleep while it screams, because the scream is framed, colored, and quietly held for you. Next, we have to ask what happens when that safety line frays. Nightosphere as narrative engine. Why writers love hell when that safety line frays. Writers reach for a trapdoor, a portal, a place beneath the story where consequences live. Here is the thing. An underworld like the Nightosphere is not just a spooky backdrop. It is a narrative pressure cooker where characters get dropped when the ordinary rules of reality are no longer enough to test them. Let's start with why underworlds keep showing up across the multiverse of fiction. You send a character down, and suddenly everything is stripped away. No distractions, no polite excuses. Just you, your worst fear, and a timeline where the wrong choice actually matters. In Adventure Time, when Finn dives into the Nightosphere, he's not just dealing with demons, he's dealing with the terror that he might enjoy power, that he might fail his friends, that heroism might crack under pressure. Think about that for a second. The show literally changes dimensions just to make interior dilemmas visible. The Nightosphere, in particular, is perfect for this, because it's not only hell, it's home. It's Hudson Abadier's office, Marceline's inheritance, and a cosmic HR department for suffering. We're going to see responsibility, inheritance, and moral compromise braided into every portal. Marceline's demonic side is not abstract, it is tied to this specific realm of contracts and hunger. When her dad eats her fries, it is petty and ridiculous, but it is also a tiny domestic preview of a much bigger pattern. He will always take what he wants, and she will always have to decide how much of that legacy she's willing to carry. Underworld arcs are also cliffhanger machines. Someone falls through a portal, gets dragged into a screaming sky of green fire, and the episode cuts. Will they escape? Will they change? The tension writes itself. But in that specifically Adventure Time way, the show loves to undercut the terror with dry absurdity. Finn becomes ruler of the Nightosphere, not by conquering it, but by accidentally reading the wrong incantation. And suddenly, hell is about line management and paperwork. The cliffhanger turns into a joke, and the joke secretly turns into character growth. And then there are the rules, the contracts, the fine print that might as well glow at the center of time. The Nightosphere runs on deals, betrayals, loopholes, and last-minute rescues baked right into its legal structure. Hudson's power depends on consent and signatures, which means every soul is a potential plot device, a bargain made in desperation, a clause misunderstood, a wish for escape phrased just cleverly enough to snap the chains. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than Ooo itself. So beyond the law, the Nightosphere is a tool, a flexible stage where the show can crank the cosmic pressure, push its characters to the edge of their existence, and then, crucially, bring them home again. And once you see it as a narrative engine, you have to ask, what happens when hell stops being just a backdrop and starts leaking into everything else? From screams to silence, winding down our descent when hell starts leaking, It's easy to fixate on the drips, the contracts, the cubicles, the screaming hallways that look uncomfortably like an office building at the edge of the universe. But here is the thing. As we drift further into the night, those sharp details don't need to stay sharp. They can soften, they can blur. Let's start by pulling back a little. We've walked through Hudson Abadir's paperwork maze, where a soul is less a sacred essence and more a badly filed document with a signature in the wrong place. We've watched Marceline sing about fries and fathers and absence, tiny domestic wounds echoing across a cosmic underworld. We've watched the Nightosphere chew on existence like it's a spreadsheet that screams when you highlight it. Think about that for a second. A hell that runs on both hunger and memos. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the show gave us a realm that is monstrous and mundane at the same time. It is torture corridors and waiting rooms, infinite torment and very finite line management. You get promotions, demotions, and also eternal suffering. It is not just evil, it is not just necessary. It is a moral grey fog, where you can't quite tell if you're looking at a punishment engine, a cosmic recycling plant, or a badly managed family business that accidentally encompasses an entire dimension. And we're going to let those episodes you remember melt down into impressions, not the one where Finn accidentally becomes ruler, or the one where Hudson eats the fries, but the feeling of it all, the way Marceline's voice can turn a scream factory into a confession booth, the way Hudson's power feels absolute on paper, yet strangely small when he's arguing over food. The precise rules of every contract start to fade, and what remains is a soft awareness that every desire has a receipt, every wish has a filing cabinet somewhere in the dark. As you breathe, imagine the Nightosphere slowly receding. The camera pulls back from the center of time, away from Ooo, away from that boiling pocket of red and black. The individual faces disappear. The cubicles dissolve into a drifting grid. The screams stretch out, lengthen, and then flatten into a low, distant hum, like traffic far below an open window at midnight. Still there. Still awful, but indistinct enough that your mind can glide over it without catching. Because this realm is a paradox, external hell and internal mirror, a place where cosmic power is expressed as middle management and where Marceline's private grief becomes public architecture. It reflects guilt, fear, resentment, and also the bureaucratic boredom of existence itself. And as it fades into the distance, a question quietly remains: why does visiting a place this dark, in stories, feel comforting at all? In this video, we're going to end by answering that, but to do it, we have to follow one last shadow out of the Nightosphere and back into your own dreams. Why the Nightosphere feels so human. So here is the thing. The Nightosphere only feels alien until you notice how embarrassingly familiar it is. You look at this cosmic hellscape of screaming souls, lava rivers, and floating meat, and you think, wow, that's extreme. But then you see the line management, the promotions, the contracts, the bad boss who literally eats your effort, and something in you quietly goes, oh, right, that. Let's start with that familiarity. The Nightosphere is built from pieces you already know. The unfair system where the worst people rise to the top. The office where no one reads the fine print. The family conflict that never really ended, just changed costumes. Hudson Abadir is a demon, sure, but he's also the parent who doesn't listen, the manager who only shows up to take credit, the authority figure who insists you agreed because you signed something you didn't understand. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the universe just turns all of that into volcanic interior design. When the show exaggerates it into a literal underworld, it's not inventing new emotions, it's turning up the contrast on a photograph you've been staring at your whole life. The bad boss becomes an immortal soul-devouring overlord. The vague fear of being stuck in a job or role becomes an eternity clause in a contract written in blood. The quiet dread that your own choices have trapped you becomes an entire realm made of, "You said yes, and now you live here." Think about that for a second. The rules of this reality are absurd, but the emotional logic is painfully accurate. Marceline is where it all clicks. She is the bridge between your world and that one. Her pain is specific. Half demon, half vampire, abandoned in a ruined multiverse. Dad eats her fries, but the shape of it is universal. A parent who takes instead of gives. A past that keeps leaking into the present. Love tangled with resentment. When she yells at Hudson, when she sets boundaries, when she still somehow cares about him, you're watching a cosmic underworld double as a very normal living room argument that stretched across time. And we're going to notice something else. Characters survive the Nightosphere. Finn becomes ruler by accident, drowns in bureaucracy, and then gets out. Marceline goes back again and again, and still grows. Even Hudson, in his limited way, changes. The realm feels like the center of time for their worst impulses, but it is not the end of their story. It is a chapter, a very loud, very on-fire chapter. So as you drift towards sleep, let that be the quiet wish underneath all this noise, that your own inner Nightosphere, with its contracts and regrets and looping timelines of old arguments, is survivable too. Those dark corridors in your mind are not the whole universe. They are rooms in a much larger house. They are scenes in a longer narrative you are still writing, even now as the lights go down and the underworld in your chest finally, gently closes its eyes for the night. Tucking the Nightosphere in. Final reflections. So now the doors are closing. The screaming elevators are going quiet. The contracts are stacked in neat, impossible piles. The Nightosphere is, for once, on sleep mode. And here is the thing. When you pull back far enough, this realm we've been wandering through is not just Adventure Time's version of hell. It's a mirror. A warped, fluorescent funhouse reflection of contracts, culture, and family wounds, wrapped in jokes and bright colors so you can look at it without flinching. Let's start with Hudson, because he is the shadow that keeps falling across every hallway. On paper, he has all the power, ruler of the Nightosphere, soul-eating demon, master of fine print and consent. In practice, he is a tragic figure in his own timeline. Immense power, microscopic emotional range. He can rewrite the fate of a soul with a signature, but he cannot apologize for eating his daughter's fries. Think about that for a second. He can bend reality in his realm, and yet the simple act of saying "I'm sorry" might as well be sealed behind cosmic rules older than the multiverse. Marceline stands in front of that, half demon, half vampire, fully refusing to be defined by his realm. She visits the center of time in her own life, those moments where she could become another extension of the Nightosphere, and she steps away. She writes songs instead of contracts. She turns pain into music instead of promotions. Where Hudson sees a universe of assets and obligations, she sees a universe of relationships and desires that do not have to be notarized to be real. When you zoom out, all the specific details we've talked about start to blur into a single, strangely cozy image. The contracts that trap souls. The plate of stolen fries that never stops echoing. The promotion Finn accidentally earns just by reading the wrong words out loud. The songs Marceline sings that cut through the noise like a quiet wish whispered at the edge of existence. Terrifying, yes, but also weirdly bureaucratic, like the underworld is being run by a demonic office manager who got lost on the way to a corporate retreat. And we're going to carry that thought gently into your own life, because in this video, wandering through the Nightosphere is a safe rehearsal. You get to explore darkness with the lights still on. You watch contracts go wrong, parents fail, power get misused, and then you surface again in your own bed, in your own reality, with only the faint afterimage of those corridors lingering behind your eyes. The show lets you practice facing shadows so that the smaller ones in your daily existence feel a little less absolute. So as the Nightosphere powers down, you can let the details go. Let the fries, the signatures, the screaming crowds fade into static. What matters now is the feeling that even the loudest underworld can be walked through, understood, and left behind. Let the realm sink back below the horizon of your thoughts. Let Hansen and Marceline drift into the background of the universe, and let yourself rest as if some inner portal has quietly closed, leaving only silence and the soft, patient darkness of sleep. A gentle portal home, outro and sleepy CTA, and as that inner portal closes, you're still here, still drifting with us in the quiet after the chaos, lingering in the echo of the Nightosphere even as it sinks back below the horizon of your thoughts. That, in itself, is a small, cozy commitment. You walked through a realm of contracts, cosmic bureaucracy, and dad issues, and you stayed until the lights dimmed. Here is the thing. In a universe full of loud, flashing timelines and auto-playing noise, choosing to listen all the way through a sleepy deep dive about a demonic underworld is its own gentle rebellion. You let Hansen's fine print, Marceline's childhood scars, and the Nightosphere's weird office culture unfold at the pace of a bedtime story. Think about that for a second. You gave this corner of existence time to breathe, and you gave yourself time to breathe with it. If your eyes are still a little open, and your device hasn't slid off the bed yet, this is the soft moment where we're going to do the quiet channel housekeeping. If you want more sleepy lore like this, more realms that sit somewhere between horror and paperwork, you can like this video and subscribe. No contract, no soul clause, just an algorithm wish whispered into the multiverse so we can keep exploring other underworlds, other realms at the center of time, other places where power and desire get tangled. Maybe next time it's a calm float through Prismo's time room, or a slow walk across the farm world timeline, or another underworld from a completely different series held up to the same Nightosphere light. In this video, we stayed mostly with Hansen and Marceline, but there are so many other corners of reality where the rules bend in that specifically Adventure Time way. If, against all odds, you're somehow still awake, you can leave a comment as a kind of tiny mortal contract. Tell us your favorite Nightosphere moment, or the Marceline scene that felt weirdly relatable. Was it the fries, eaten with casual cruelty, Finn accidentally becoming ruler because he read the wrong incantation like it was a grocery list? Or some quiet shot where Marceline looks at her dad and you can see every broken promise in her eyes? To make this even easier, you don't have to move at all. You can just let the next video or playlist roll on like another portal opening by itself. We'll line up a Prismo deep dive or another sleepy Adventure Time analysis, so the universe keeps humming along in the background while you drift further from waking reality. And now, a gentle, low-stakes farewell. The portals are closed for tonight. The contracts are filed away in their impossible cabinets. Hansen is off somewhere balancing a ledger that never really balances. Marceline is far from the Nightosphere, guitar in hand, safe in her own timeline. You don't have to negotiate with any realm or any rule or any cosmic power. All that remains is the simple wish to rest. Let it be granted. Let yourself go. Sleep. Optional epilogue. One last look at the underworld's lights. So now, with all the ledgers closed and all the contracts asleep in their folders, we're going to float up. Higher than the tallest spire of screaming stone. Higher than Hansen's office. Higher than the last lost soul in the last forgotten corridor. Until the Nightosphere is just small, a dark continent spread out under you, its rivers of fire and acid, now only faint glowing threads, stitched across a black quilt. From up here, the chaos is quiet. Those roaring lava falls, they're pinpricks. Those endless lines of demons waiting to file complaints about their eternal torment, they're just slow-moving constellations, tiny beads of motion in a cosmic ant farm. Think about that for a second. The realm that tried to eat Finn's face, The universe of contracts and desire and bad parenting, reduced to a distant city at night, complicated, loud, but far away, safely sealed behind the glass of your imagination. Down there, Hansen is at his desk again. Of course he is. Pen scratching, eyes glowing, recalculating the math of misery like an infernal accountant who never gets to clock out. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than he is. Rules that turn every soul into a line item and every wish to escape into a clause with subclauses. Here is the thing. Even cosmic tyrants have routines. Even devourers of existence have paperwork. Somewhere else in that multiverse, far from the center of time and far from that office, Marceline is leaning back on some rooftop, bass in her hands, playing to no audience in particular. The song is quiet enough that even the Nightosphere can't quite catch it. A little off-key. A little perfect. She is not trapped in that underworld tonight. She is in her own timeline, in her own reality, and the only contract she's dealing with is the one between fingers and strings. Let's start to pull back from all of it. The fires dim, the rivers cool to embers, the demons settle into their endless routines, like office workers who forgot there was ever a clock. From this distance, the Nightosphere is just another cluster of lights on the map of existence, no closer to you than a star you can name but never touch. It's there. You are here. That separation matters. So imagine, gently, the portal home, the same portal that once spat Finn and Jake into impossible bureaucracy, now opening like a soft round mouth in the air of your own room. You step through without effort. No contracts, no tests, just gravity giving you back to your blankets. Behind you, the doorway doesn't slam. It sighs, it closes the way an eyelid closes. Slow, inevitable kind. On the other side, the Nightosphere keeps going. It always will. Timelines twist, souls negotiate. Hansen complains about his workload to no one who can fire him. But that is their problem, not yours. In this video, the underworld has become background noise, a far-off city whose sirens you can't quite hear. Listen instead to what is actually here. Your breathing, rising, and falling with its own quiet power. Maybe, if you want, you can let a faint echo of Marceline's bass follow you. A single low note humming somewhere just outside waking reality, stretching across the universe like a lullaby played through the walls. And now, even that fades. No portals, no realms, no cosmic contracts. Just the off switch, because in that specifically Adventure Time way, even hell has won. Tonight, for you, it's been flipped. The Nightosphere is dark. The multiverse can wait. The only realm that matters is the small, warm timeline of your body at rest. We're going to leave you there, not in the underworld. Not in the center of time, just here, where every thought can finally power down. Let the last lights of the Nightosphere flicker out behind your closed eyes. Let the universe keep turning without your help, and let yourself fall, slowly, gently, completely, into sleep. Silence after the screams. Space for your own dreams, and now that you've landed, here is the thing. You don't have to hold on to any of it. Not every contract, not every scream, not every cosmic rule we traced through the Nightosphere, like red string across a conspiracy wall at the center of time. The story already did its small job just by being here, by filling the room with a voice so your mind didn't have to narrate itself for a while. Think about that for a second. You invited a whole underworld in, just so your own thoughts could take the night off. You don't need to remember where Hansen filed his souls, or how the multiverse bends around every bad wish, or which timeline belonged to which terrified little demon in a waiting room. You don't have to keep the map. You don't have to keep the law. You can let it all go the way a dream of Prismo's couch dissolves the moment the alarm goes off. We're going to let the images thin out now. Those lines of screaming souls, let them fade into a quiet hallway with the lights turned low. Those contracts written in infernal legalese, let the ink run, slowly, until the words blur into gentle, meaningless shapes. Every sharp edge of the Nightosphere can lose its power and melt back into the soft darkness behind your eyelids. If one stray picture lingers, the phrase Marceline never got back, a portal yawning over some unlucky universe, a bored demon stamping forms, that's fine. Let it drift to the far wall of your mind, like one last glowing screen in Prismo's time room. Then imagine reaching out, not with power, not with a wish, just with the quiet desire to sleep, and clicking it off. If you fell asleep halfway through, that's okay. That was the plan. You missed the rules, the contracts, the cosmic fine print. The Nightosphere will still be there tomorrow, in that specifically Adventure Time way where nothing terrible ever quite leaves. It just waits off screen until you're ready again. You don't owe this universe your attention. Not anymore. Not tonight. So now we slow down. Intentionally. Almost to nothing. No more new ideas. No more timelines to track. Just the simple reality of your breath moving in and out, like a tiny private universe expanding and contracting under your ribs. The Nightosphere can keep its chaos. The multiverse can keep spinning. You are allowed to do nothing. Let the last words fall away. Let the dark be gentle. I'll stay here at the edge of your awareness, not talking, not pulling, just keeping you quiet company in the dark until you're fully gone to sleep. Good night.